rotate and then he's gonna switch seats with you.
It's got long gone, it's died.
And he's gonna switch with you. Of course. And then you're.
Awesome.
Your call.
It's
your call.
Yeah, we do need those. We need a lot of kids.
That's why I
Oh, yeah. Good.
You're still on time for 45 seconds.
Hey, Trevor. I was like, dang it, this was on time, lollygagging, and then had to turn around and go back.
Okay, calling to order on this lovely rainy Tuesday evening, November 26th, the regular meeting of the City Council of Palos Verdes Estates here at 6:30 p.m. Please rise and join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, will you please have a roll call?
Councilmember McGowan.
Here.
Councilmember Timms.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson.
Here.
Mayor Murdock.
Here.
And Cooley.
Thank you. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any modifications they want to move, or can I have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Mayor's report, it's Thanksgiving week, and I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving on Thursday. As the mayor, I am thankful for our wonderful residents, our dedicated staff, and the opportunity I've had to serve with my fellow council members who work hard to serve our residents. I have other things I'm thankful for, but I'll leave that for my family.
Oh, do tell.
After everyone has rested up from Thanksgiving and Black Friday, please come join us on Sunday from 5 to 7 p.m. in Malaga Cove Plaza for our annual tree lighting ceremony. The tree will be lit at 6 p.m., but there's going to be lots going on before that. We're going to have carolers, hot chocolate, crafts. There are 2 food trucks this year, a wood-fired pizza truck and a jerk chicken truck. So it should be a good time and some good food for everyone. It's just a great opportunity for us to all come together as a community. And then 2 weeks later will be our annual Santa Parade on Sunday, December 15th. And it's an opportunity to meet Santa for the children in Malaga Cove Plaza. The parade route and timing of where the parade's going to be at different points of the city are available on the city website. Right now, because of the website design or limitations, that route right is shown under the, if you go on the home page, there's a calendar section and there's an event calendar. You got to click on that and then you can click on the link. But as soon as we're done with the tree lighting, the parade is going to take front and center stage in the spotlight on the city homepage. And then finally, the city is currently accepting applications for 1 position on the Planning Commission and 1 on the Parklands Committee to fill a recent vacancy and an upcoming vacancy. Applications are due to the city clerk by December 12th. It's a great opportunity to meet your fellow residents and to serve the city. Did you know that you can sign up to receive email updates on what's happening in the city? Now, if you're watching this meeting, you probably already know this. So please share this information with neighbors and friends who may not be quite aware of this right now. But if you go to the homepage at pvestates.org, there's a brown banner towards the bottom, and it has a little thing that says, sign me up. And if you click on it, you can select what type of information you want to sign up for. You can get announcements about agendas for the various council and committee meetings. You can sign up for updates for our bi-weekly update or our new, any other kind of events or information that the city is broadcasting. So it's really up to you to decide how much or how little you want to receive from the city. You know, in this digital age, email updates really are the best way to stay current on what is happening in the city, especially since we don't have an actual city newspaper. Daily Breeze doesn't cover us that much, which is good and. Anyway.
It's all good. I'm talking now.
City manager's report. Woo.
All right, well, Friday Night Lights, everybody. Palos Verdes High School has made the finals of the CIF football. And I don't know if you know, did you know that a couple of weeks ago we allowed a nighttime playoff game, and it was the first night playoff game in high school history. That was pretty special. So they came around again, they made the finals, they won the coin toss, the phone started ringing, and how can I get bad karma and end this magical run? So we said, okay, have your game, we're gonna support you, go all the way, bring home the championship, and then come back in the spring and we'll figure out a way to memorialize this. So I'm not getting Sunday phone calls, you know, can we cover? So for now, let's stay in the positive and root the Sea Kings on. So congratulations, Friday night at 7 o'clock, the big game in town. But before then, we'll be closed on Thursday for Thanksgiving. And then obviously we are closed on Friday. So I know staff is looking forward to the extended break. And the last thing I was gonna do before I turn it over to our chief is, with the end of November is the end of No Shave November. Looking at Chief Halinga.
I'm ready for the end.
Well, so here's what I'm gonna say publicly. I think early, you were the leader of the clubhouse with a beer, but mine's coming stronger than yours later. So I'm getting a lot of compliments and being told to keep it. I'm just saying, if you wanna make a policy change downstairs, I know a guy you can talk to. All right, Chief, you're up.
Thanks, Mr. City Manager, I appreciate it. And I can see, I do can see, I think yours is looking a little better.
Did you see the Facebook post?
Yes, I did. Thanks for your support. Thank you, Mr. City Manager, and good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. I have a few updates for you. Two are regarding new hires. So we have hired Rebecca Gomez as a police captain. She started last week. She started off with a pretty busy week, and she's been hitting the ground running, doing a fantastic job so far. She comes to us from another agency in LA County with over 16 years of experience, including nearly 10 years as a police sergeant. She's always prioritized community engagement, and I will continue to do so in the PD, of course. We are currently scheduled and looking forward to a formal swearing-in ceremony in front of this council, hopefully in January. And with more news on the hire front, we have a new police officer who will work his first patrol shift this Thursday. Officer Riley Nara is excited to start his field training program on Thanksgiving Day. And we will plan his swearing-in ceremony when he completes the field training program. We do have open recruitment still for police officer if you or anybody you know is interested. And we also have an ongoing recruitment for our emergency preparedness and community outreach coordinator. And I thought I'd do a little show and tell tonight. So this council earlier this year approved new mobile data computers. These are the computers that we purchased. They're made by a company called GitTac. They're very similar to a laptop, but you'll see they're ruggedized, similar to a tough book. So our department has not had new MDCs in 15 years. The old MDCs stopped working a few years ago, and we've been taking them out. I would have bought an old one, but it'd probably take up about the size of this. So the officers are excited to have these in the police cars. They will be able to write reports on these. They'll be able to see the dispatch comments about the ongoing calls that we have along our locations and things along those lines. So that is something we are definitely looking forward to installing. The installation should start next week. And then for my second show and tell, if this works properly. So I wanted to give some visibility to what our officers have been doing this year. So a week and a half ago, I think it was November 16th, one of our officers stopped a vehicle at 2:30 in the morning on Puget Drive West, and he recovered that revolver that's in the center of the picture there. That was actually stolen in 1995 in Sacramento. The person that was arrested was actually also from Sacramento. And although it had been on the street for close to 30 years, it didn't last too long up in Palos Verdes Estates. So I want to give credit to our patrol officers for that arrest, which was just a little while ago. But that marks the 8th firearm that we've taken off the street this year alone. So in Palos Verdes Estates, it is a very safe city, but I wanted to highlight what our officers are doing out there in the field and the hard work that they're doing, along with keeping themselves safe when they come across situations like this, and ultimately keeping the community safe. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Communications from the public. This portion of the agenda is reserved for comments from the public on items which are not on the agenda. Due to state law, no action can be taken by council this evening on matters presented under this section. If the council determines action is warranted, the item may be referred to staff or put on a future council agenda. I only have one card for anybody who wants to speak on this at this point in time, and so John Cradell, if you want to come up, please.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, City Council, City staff, and residents, my name is John Cradell, Palos Verdes Estates Neighborhood Watch Area Coordinator for Lenata Bay South. Welcome, Captain Rebecca Gomez. We're happy to have you as part of our police force and look forward to working with you soon. Happy Thanksgiving. We'd like to wish the City Council, City staff, Police Department, all our fellow neighbors a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for the hard work and volunteerism that our City Council provide in making our city better. We thank our city staff for their efforts to make our city run smoothly. We thank our Palos Verdes Estates Police Department for their loyal service and protection. We thank our residents for making sure that our community is safe by being watchful, aware, neighborly, and supporters of Palos Verdes Estates Neighborhood Watch. With respect to the holiday meals and annual meeting, resident dues and donations help us to support our annual holiday meals for our first responders who work on Thanksgiving and Christmas days. Meals this year will be made by Malaga Ranch Market here in Malaga Cove and sponsored by Palos Verdes Estates Neighborhood Watch. Providing these holiday meals is only one of the many ways we support our police through our community, our community throughout the year. Annual meeting. Thank you to those who attended our recent annual meeting. We appreciate our special guests, speakers, City Manager Coleman, Police Chief Helinga, and Detective Marino. Thank you to our local raffle prize donors, Malaga Cove Ranch Market, Lenata Bay Market and Deli, Lenata Bay Hardware, Raffaello's Pizza, and the Black Bamboo. The meeting was well attended. Photos and information can be found on our website, pbenw.org. Thank you and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public wanting to comment now? All right, consent agenda. I've got 4 items. I'm going to read them off, and we've got a couple of modifications on these, and I'll identify those as well. Number 1, approval of warrants. 2, adoption of proposed resolution authorizing the city manager to release warrants during the week of December 23rd, 2024. 3, city council meeting actions. There's a revision to that, indicating that Mayor Pro Tem Rosie recused herself from voting on the 2 golf club items since she is a member. Number 4, planning commission meeting actions. And there is an edit to item number 9 where conditions number 38 and 39 were left off but have been added. Revisions will be posted to the agenda after this meeting. They are available now to council and the public. But I wanted to highlight those so that everyone
Can you
knows.
say that again?
On
Number 9.
Number 9, 30, conditions 38 and 39 have been added. Can you, Cheryl, could you please read for us what those? She's gonna read them to us.
There's also a revision to, condition 36. There was a clarification, and the condition is the proposed pool shall be pulled an additional 5 feet, totaling 10 feet out of the required 15-foot rear yard, side yard setback area. Initially, the condition just had the 5 feet. It was unclear that it's a total of 10 feet. And then there was an error on my end. I forgot to include condition 38, which read, the upper level patio shall be maintained at an elevation of 104.5 feet per the original city council approval. And condition 39 is the area adjacent to the south property line on the rear upper patio area must have a 3.5-foot planter box with vegetation maintained at the adjacent wall height.
That's a lot to absorb.
Yeah, so,
On a contentious project.
yeah. So, we got this revised packet, but the revised packet doesn't have 38 and 39, so was that posted online so that the public can see that? Am I not looking at, I could be making a mistake on the packet, so.
You're right on that.
Okay.
No, it wasn't posted. It's my understanding, and it wasn't posted online. The city clerk is better to answer that question.
Mayor and council, the revision came after the agenda was posted. It will be available on the website after this meeting.
Trevor, are we, if the public hasn't had access to these revisions and we don't have it in writing, are we able to rule on this item number 9 in the planning commission action minutes?
Yeah, so all the conditions haven't been posted.
This hasn't been posted.
Well, the item was posted, it omitted,
But it, yeah.
it omitted 2 conditions and there was no modification.
So you look at that for a second. So, city clerk, sorry, so in the revised packet that we had on the dais here, said agenda item number 4, planning commission meeting, and then it's just said revision. So what was the revision?
I wasn't provided that information. I believe the community director just stated what those revisions were.
So the revision was the 2 things she said, but this,
Yes,
And the change to number 36. But you're right, we don't have it.
correct. There was no other revision outside of item number 9. Okay, I don't know. It feels like we need to kick this back.
Okay, so the issue is on the planning commission minutes number 9, condition 36 was incorrectly reported.
That's one of them.
That's one of them. And 37 and 38 are
No,
missing.
38 and 39.
Sorry, 38
are
and
missing
39 are
from the
missing.
document.
Nor have they been posted online.
well, so the other issue is only, was it 15 days from their actions?
That's the problem,
Yeah.
is that if we want to take action on it, I think the clock will run out if we try to continue this another time.
Well,
So
not
it's
if we don't kick it back to planning to correct the, remand it back to planning to correct
Was,
the conditions. Well, to
Mayor?
accept the corrected conditions
Mayor?
and then come back here.
And Pro Tem Lozey, we're having a special meeting on December 4th, and at that meeting, the minutes will be on the agenda for them to approve. The minutes before you tonight is just to review and, review and file. And it allows you the opportunity, which is in the code, if you want to appeal any of the decisions that the planning commission made.
Okay, so then that's right. So then the minutes at the December 4th meeting will be corrected.
They have been corrected.
And the planning
Yeah.
commission, well, right, and then the planning commission can approve on the 4th at their special meeting, and then
Yes.
and then the appeal clock starts ticking, correct?
No,
Once
it
the
doesn't.
minutes-
The appeal clock starts ticking after, the day of the meeting, which was, anybody could appeal the decision. All decisions become effective December 5th.
So we're not approving the minutes.
No, you're
It's
just
receiving the
review and
file
file, and if you want,
deciding if there's something
We
we want to bring up.
Do we have any,
What you're trying to figure out is not having seen condition 38 and 39, you're not sure if you're comfortable with what has been decided on this contentious project.
We don't have the conditions. You can't bring them up.
she just read them,
She read them.
I read.
although number 39, that was a lot to take in, but I mean, do we have any appeals? I mean, is anybody appealing? I mean, I guess there's no point in us calling a public hearing if no one else is appealing.
The resolutions have gone out to all the applicants, and the applicants are aware that they can appeal a decision up till December 4th, and December 5th, the decision is final.
So for whatever it's worth, there, on the planning commission agenda, there was applicant correspondence, but there is no other correspondence.
And was there other correspondence?
No. The only attachment is from the applicant, so there's no, there's nothing from the neighbors.
No, there wasn't. There were 3 people that spoke regarding the project at the last planning commission meeting.
I guess if those people, obviously those people are on top of this project.
It is what it is, and
I guess if-
they have the right to appeal.
They have the right to appeal, and they certainly know how to do that. I've done it before. So I guess leave it at that. What do you think, John?
If you have additional questions, you can push this back to the agenda one more time.
I'm just gonna leave it. I think they know what's going on. Okay, thank you. Okay, so those are 4 items. Does anybody need to pull any of these?
What are we talking about?
Hold on.
Sorry.
Are you looking at the
We're just on,
resolution 2458?
what are you talking about?
The second sentence.
You talking about the BBC? Instead of December 23rd, 2024, it should say January.
Section 3,
Of
resolution item 2, article 2.
item 2.
Section 3 should say, prepare for the first regular meeting of January for ratification.
Oh, yeah, I did pick that up before, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's.
All right, so if no one's pulling anything, do I have any public comment on these 4 items? If not, I'm gonna let one of my colleagues here craft the appropriate resolution, motion, which will have to note the revisions for items 2, 3, and 4. And it sounds like Michael's queuing up for that.
Or I'm looking at the city attorney making him do it.
Sure.
Let me add that, just to complicate matters, on item 4, planning commission meeting action, item number 8, I am recused.
Oh, right.
It is across the street from me.
That's right. Okay. So, I will move. We approve the consent agenda, item number 1. Was item number 2 the one that said, yeah, item number 2 had the correction to January of, January 25.
Instead of September.
Correct. Item number 3, revised to indicate, as city clerk mentioned, I have recused on 2 items, so she corrected that. And planning commission meeting actions that corrects item 36, which actually is correct in this report, and adds conditions 38 and 39, and recuses Councilmember Kemps from item number 8.
To clarify, I believe you're approving the minutes with the corrections, and then for the planning commission meeting actions, you're receiving and filing, you're noting that the additional information was provided to the council.
That's what I said. Yes, what he said. What he said.
I'll second that.
Say
motion.
that again?
I was saying on number 3, you were approving the minutes with the corrections that were noted. And on number 4, you're receiving and filing it, but noting that there was additional information provided orally by staff.
That's right.
We don't approve, we can proceed.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right. Next, we've got item number 5, which is the HR Green amendment, which also has some revisions. So I'm gonna let the interim, well, I'll let you guys decide who's gonna talk about the revisions, but let's talk about the amendment to the HR Green contract.
Mayor, council members, the item before you is an amendment to the contract with HR Green to provide engineering and building and safety services. The contract is split between community development and public works. In preparing the item for your consideration, I erroneously thought it was amendment number 6. In fact, it is actually, I'm sorry, I thought it was amendment number 7. It's actually amendment number 8. We had one last year. There are some changes to the report to affect that, as well as in the interim, HR Green and staff, we revised the hourly rates to an exact 3.5% with a few exceptions, where one year there isn't a raise, and then on another position, there are no raises, and on the third group, there's CIP, so they must follow prevailing wage. While we did that, we made those changes to both of those. You have a packet in front of you that has all of those changes outlined. You have a clean copy and red line to show where all those corrections were made.
I believe there was a third correction too, right? Who signs it?
The signatory, yes, in fact, that has been changed as well. Mayor brought to our attention, this fellow had retired. And one of the reasons why we are recommending continuity, so that we have that institutional memory. Unfortunately, I stepped in a month ago and didn't pick those up. My apologies. HR Green has provided engineering and building and safety services since 2015. There have been several amendments, mostly to adjust rates and extend the term beyond a identified termination date. The last amendment, as I noted, was in December of 2023, which established a process for submitting invoices and then the city processing them in a timely manner. The amendment before you is essentially to extend the term 18 months to June 2026, putting it on a schedule that can address any changes with your annual budget as you consider those things. And then again, to adjust hourly rates consistent with the new term. Through the contract, HR Green is essentially our staff for building and engineering. That their tenure with Palos Verdes Estates is important to their success. It allows them to learn our process, be comfortable with it, understand the culture of the organization and the feeling of the community and how they want services to be provided. That understanding is critically important because we want it to be seamless to our customers. We don't want them to know whether it's contract or otherwise. Now, having said that, there should be an assessment at some point, whether it's 5 years or 10 years, but a chance for both parties to step back and look at the relationship and say, is it still fair? Are we still getting the value that we think we should? That would be done through an RFP process. Staff is recommending that we extend for the 18 months, and in the interim, we start to put together an RFP that we can conduct before June of 2026. Maybe that HR Green is a perfect fit for us, and that will come out in the RFP. Maybe that we find somebody who fits our needs better. I can go through each of the each of the amendments if you like, but generally speaking, it is to change the date, change the number, the amendment number, reflect an amendment in December of 2023, and change the signatory and revise those rates so that they're exactly 3.5%. I can do that if you want to go through each one. Otherwise, that concludes my report. HR Green representatives and staff are available to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. I did want to comment that amendment number 7 was one that we had passed last December, which had to do, we had a longstanding problem with the timeliness of HR Green billing. And I'm pleased to see that on this month, it's November 26th, on this month's warrant, or this meeting's warrants, that it's for the October billings, so very current. So I do appreciate the changes that have been made with that respect. Any questions anybody has on this matter?
I have 2.
Okay.
One is, if we haven't posted this, may we please post this along with the agenda? That was a nod. The second is, throughout the agreement, it refers to with limited exceptions. I looked at the table and I see the amendment to 3.5 with exact hourly rates. Could we clarify what the limited exceptions are and why with limited exceptions were added throughout the agreement?
Sure. If you would look at, under building, the senior building inspector, that rate will not change during this amendment. It will stay 137.25. The plan check manager goes up 3.5% in the first year, that is January 2025, and then it remains at that rate in January 2026. Same with the plan checker. And then the last one, the building inspector, code officer, that does not change in year 1, and it does go up 3.5% in year 2. And then the final one is under engineering, is the senior public works inspector. That position is regulated by prevailing wage, and so it's a required DIR, the Department of Industrial Relations, requires mandates an increase of 5%.
Okay, and I see that on page, well, it's referenced there, and it's also, it's noted in text, I see it on page 3. Noted in the track changes that we're sitting looking at here, okay.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I've got a comment.
I mean, public comment.
Okay, go ahead.
Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, David?
Given the fact that there's,
I think your microphone.
I'm sorry, given the fact that there's delayed billings with HR Green, and sometimes it's only a month, which is understandable, I would want to encourage our finance department to try to figure out a way to build some accruals into our statements so that we have a better understanding of where we stand throughout the year against the contract. Because here, or in the past, we've had huge swings. In some months, there's no accruals made. There's the billing may not have come in on a timely basis, and it's more on a cash basis, and that's a very difficult way to manage the city. So that's my request.
Try making sure there's liquidity for
And,
all those swings.
well, that's what it turns out to be for Treasury. Ms. Greenberg, thank you. It's a real problem because they're one of our larger vendors, and it's critical that we have a better accrual understanding level and cash flow projections.
All right, any other comments from council? If not, can I have a motion, please?
Yeah,
Do you want to introduce? There's a whole
Oh, yeah,
HR Green
let's-
corner
do you
over
guys
there.
want-
May
you
as
guys
well
wanna say
introduce
anything?
them.
You want to make your big announcement?
Say something inspirational.
Good evening. Honorable Mayor, members of council, staff, happy Thanksgiving. I'm Eric Smith, and I'm the Director for Municipal Engineering for HR Green. I flew in today because you guys are a very important client to us. I'm from Colorado, actually, so hopefully I'll make it home. It's snowing there. So we'll see how that works out. But, we have different levels of clients that are tier 1 through tier 3. PDE, Palos Verdes Estates, is a tier 1 client for us. So you guys are very important to us. We've had a long history, and we really appreciate the opportunity to serve you and serve the residents of PDE.
Sorry to interrupt you. Does tier 1 mean revenue, or does it mean combination of services, or what identifies one agency as a tier 1, 2, or 3?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's not only revenue, but it's longevity. So both of those go in to the equation, if you will. And so here in California, you're the only tier 1 client that we have. So it's very important. The other thing that I point out is that we as a company, every 3 years, we go through a visioning process. And so we're just finishing that up for 2025 to extend through 2027. And we're making major investments here in Southern California. So you guys are a big part of that. We really appreciate the business, appreciate the opportunity to serve you. And I want to wish all of you happy Thanksgiving. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is that it for the rest of you back there?
Carlos is like ducking down.
I know.
Look at him. He's like,
Steve's
way back there.
Don't
There
look
we
at-
go. Come
don't
on,
look at me.
Carlos. Oh, he put on a tie.
All right, so getting called out. I know-
he wears that all the time.
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna sleep with this tonight too. So first off, Mayor and members of the City Council, again, exciting time for PDE. It's the holidays, and as we think about things and reflect about being thankful for things, HR Green is absolutely thankful for the partnership that we have with the City of Palos Verdes Estates. I personally have been here working with Palos Verdes Estates the last 2 years. I've seen the ups and downs of the city, and I gotta say, we're on the upswing. And I'm just glad to be able to contribute to any of the assistance, any of the help that we can give to the city. Tier 1 or tier 3, we're always gonna give our 110% effort to the city and ensure that staff feels supported, as well as your community, and making those differences, because that's part of our values, is making those differences within the communities that we partner with. So again, thank you. Have a great holiday, and we'll continue to see each other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Calvin.
Yeah, I was gonna add something in. I think the last few comments, it was nice to hear tier 1 and upswing and all that stuff, but I think it's important is, is the institutional knowledge, and, I sense where this is going, so I don't want to, create problems, but, the council will recall back in the summer, we started an exercise with our then Public Works Director to try to take a look at the Public Works Department and try to find ways to provide service better. Not saying we were doing a bad job, but is there a better way to do this? I think it's something we're so interested in. We've been hit by the change bug, lost that Public Works Director. We're on our second interim Public Works Director since then, and found out, he's hiding back there somewhere, that Steve Lariso, our very trusted city engineer, is moving on to bigger and better things. He swears to me has nothing to do with us or HR Green. It's an opportunity that he can't pass up. And I want to share with the council and the community, more importantly, because I've already spoken with the council about this. We did have a call. This all happened very fast. It all happened at the same time. This contract was up to be extended. There was a lot of moving parts. But we did have a good call last week. They came out. I'm encouraged about some of the things they're hearing. How they're hearing me and sort of my vision and sort of what I'm looking for. And really, it goes back to what Phil said, is that's that continuity and extension of city staff. It should be seamless. Nobody should know the difference. They should know that the City of Palos Verdes Estates is serving its resident. Who cares where they come from? They're just doing a good job. So with that theme, I encourage all of you to extend this. 18 months is a long time, we get a lot right, and possibly something's wrong, but I'm encouraged by what I've heard recently. So I just wanted to add that in.
Thank you. With that, do I have a motion?
Sure.
Okay,
I'll move that we approve amendment number 8 to the professional services agreement for building and safety engineering and public works services with HR Green Pacific Incorporated, reference to HR Green, extending the term of the agreement to June 30, 2026, and adjusting hourly rates by 3.5. Bear with me a second.
how do we do that when you've got any exceptions?
I think the answer to the question is extending the term of the agreement to June 30, 2026, and adjusting hourly rates generally as referenced in the amended agreement by 3.5% annually each January 1st. As noted and modified in the updated attachment to this agenda item number 5, as incorporated and updated by the city clerk after approval.
You have a full page?
Motion.
I'll say correct. I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, motion carries. Let's continue on the subs. All right, thank you, and safe travels. I hope you do get home to Colorado and you have a white Thanksgiving. Number 6, we have LSL and their preliminary report on their review of the finance department.
I'm gonna kick this off if that's okay.
The boss.
Turn it away, not the boss. Who's the boss? Thank you.
Wait.
I wanted to kick this off, and you know, it's big surprise. I'm not going to get technical with finance department stuff. I'm going to leave that to Kelly and Noah back there. But I want to talk a little bit about sort of where we are and where we're going. And I'm writing notes down, and I wrote some stuff in the staff report. But basically, a couple of months ago, we brought LSL in. They'll talk a little bit about themselves to do an assessment of our finance department. We know that we've had challenges in that department. We've had challenges in all of our departments, and really the challenges are about stability and historical knowledge. There's been so much turnover that, you know, it's hard to grow and stabilize when you're constantly turning over. So you guys know me, I don't like to sit in the negative, I like to sit in the positive. So here's some positive things, and it's gonna relate to what they're gonna be talking about here in a minute. Our city clerk's department has stabilized. We did it through the use of a consultant to come in, a professional city clerk who came in, worked very hard to get things ready to go, to turn it over to Tamika so she could have some success. We've done the same thing with HR. It's taken a long time to find somebody. We have somebody, unfortunately, she got sick this week, but we have somebody in HR now who's doing a great job. Our police department has really stabilized, and the rewards of that you just saw tonight. They've hired 3 new officers in the last 90 days, a new captain, really some good stuff happening down there. So I really hope that this is the start of this happening for our finance department. It's no big surprise, we've had challenges. Our current finance staff has done a great job with some tough situations. So with that lead in, I'll turn over to Kelly. You can start, Kelly. Kelly with LSL, to talk a little bit about what they found, and then maybe some ideas on how we can move forward. So, all right, Kelly.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. Thank you for having me here tonight to present to you our very preliminary observations and recommendations on our Finance Department assessment. I'm going to kick it off with a little bit of background and a little introduction into the work that we've been doing. And then I'm going to invite my colleague up to give you some more details of the observations and recommendations. So we were brought in a couple of months ago. We started at the beginning of October to really understand how the Finance Department is currently operating, who is responsible for what in finance, the transactions and maybe the timing of where those transactions are, for instance, bank reconciliations and investment recons, with an ultimate goal of identifying whether or not the roles and responsibilities of each member with finance are where they really should be, optimizing each person's strengths, optimizing the resources that the finance department currently has, and then ultimately make some recommendations on best practices, operational efficiencies that could be gained with changes in responsibilities, and then ultimately a plan to get the finance department and really the accounting records up to date. The city is falling behind because of the limited staff, because of the resource needs from a staff perspective. They're often doing far more than just accounting work. We're still undertaking that assessment. It's a process. A lot of what we've gone through, just realized there's a presentation deck. Do we have the deck up?
Yes.
Sorry, I can keep going. I'm only on slide 1. But this is a preliminary assessment to give the council an update of where we are, some of our preliminary observations and recommendations, but to also address some of the items that are probably a little bit of more urgency, particularly updating the accounting records and getting through the 2024 year-end close. We're going to continue doing the assessment, but we wanted to at least bring a report back prior to the holidays. So the overall assessment, I'll just keep going. The overall assessment included interviews with various personnel. We also obtained documents. This actually serves 2 purposes. We asked each of the staff members to provide a list of the tasks that they perform on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. Yes, it helps us understand their core responsibilities, but there's a secondary benefit. When an organization has high turnover, anytime we do an assessment, it's a best practice to document what each role is doing so that if we have further challenges with staffing and somebody leaves, we now know what that desk does. Even though some of those things may not make sense for them to do, at least this is what they do today, and we can bring in a replacement staff and let them hit the ground running.
Kelly, can I just have you back up for a minute and introduce kind of your background and who you are?
And your firm.
Yes.
Sure, absolutely. That was not in my slide deck, my apologies. So I'm a partner at LSL. My name is Kelly Telford. With me is Noah Daniels. He's a director with my firm. So we have a very long-standing history of work in the public sector. We have an audit department that is one of the predominant CPA firms auditing local governments within California. Both cities, counties were actually your former auditors from a number of years back. And I worked at LSL straight out of school. I was here for about 10 years, and then I left and became a finance director myself. So I spent a number of years in local government, working with a county and 2 cities here in Southern California, really doing exactly what our organization undertook so far for your city. Every time I came in as a finance director, step 1 is conduct an assessment of your team. Figure out who's doing what, figure out whether or not those responsibilities make sense with that role, and then ultimately making the changes necessary to optimize efficiencies and get folks on the right track. I came back to LSL in 2022, we've had a government practice for, gosh, as long as I can remember, easily since the 70s, probably prior to that. Our firm was formed in 1929, so we've been around for a really long time. And we are one of the few firms, local firms, that has not sold. We are one of the largest firms in this industry in California because of that. Noah is also a former finance director, which is why I pulled him into this project in particular. Noah was a finance director. He's got a long history with LSL as well, worked here. We were both auditors, solely in local government. And then he also left and became a finance director and joined our team earlier this year. And because we walked a mile in your team's shoes, because we've seen operational changes in a finance department, we've really seen the good, the bad, and the ugly in a finance department, it puts us in a unique position to be able to make recommendations and see things that others may not see. not from a bad perspective, actually from a good perspective. We understand when staff have limited resources and there's a drain on those resources, because at the end of the day, every fire needs put out, whether it's a finance department fire or not. So it puts us in that unique position to be able to conduct this assessment, not only because of our expertise in the public sector, but also because of our experiences in local government. Okay, my apologies for that delay.
That helps. All right, okay, now that you've got your presentation.
Yes. Okay, so the assessment started with the daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual assessment of what is each role within finance currently doing. The intention is to understand current state in order to identify opportunities to build a future state. It involves the understanding of those responsibilities, and then it also involves interviews with staff. Some of those interviews were solely around the roles that they currently perform, but it's also around their greater role within the city, whether it's communications with the city manager's office or communications with other departments. What I want to do right now is introduce you to Noah. He's going to go through preliminary observations and recommendations. I do think it's important to note that these are preliminary. This is not an all-encompassing list. And we do anticipate additional observations and recommendations as we complete the project. No?
Noah, do you want us to save questions for the end, or do you want to make this interactive?
I think it'd be helpful to save questions for the end,
Okay.
so we can just kind of get the full encompassing, look at everything. Some of these observations you'll see kind of play into each other too.
Okay.
So I'm just going to walk through, can we go to the next slide, please? These summarize the points in the report. What I want to cover here are just the kind of the topsy-turvy of the observation and the recommendation that Kelly and I would provide for these findings. Starting with number one is, to speak on Kelly's point, we first look at all the tasks that are performed at those different recurring cycles and also those non-recurring tasks. When we put everything together, we start to see some overlaps. The overlap that was readily apparent was there was an overlap of responsibilities between the finance director and the senior accountant, just in varying degrees between reporting, budget management, and year-end close processes. And it also looked like the senior accountant was a little bit underutilized in some of the daily operations. And I do want to point out that the finance director role is currently being held by a consultant that was brought on last spring to help with the budget and some other tasks that were being assigned to them. So moving on to the recommendation, the obvious here being there needs to be a clear delineation of those roles and to minimize those overlaps. And I'm just going to kind of keep rolling as we do these. I'll try to do some cues to get on to switch slides. So what would be ideal, an ideal state, and again, I say ideal with the understanding that the finance director is being held by that consultant position and the senior accountant is performing some of those functions that we already mentioned, but it would be good to have the senior accountant focus on more of the core accounting duties and the finance director be that field general in a sense, directing traffic, managing the resources of the department, making sure that there's accountability within the department. Considering that finance director is a consultant, it would require a redefinition of their scope and role. And moving on to observation 2, the other thing we noticed that was quite quickly was just there's a high volume of workload with that limited staff that's causing persistent delays in the various financial reporting tasks, and there's not a system to track any sort of missed deadlines, missed reports, journal entries, and things of that nature. There was actually a really strong, I thought, comprehensive report that was put together by staff in way of an action plan that outlined a lot of those responsibilities that need to happen during the year, but essentially without that leader to kind of guide that, those things were falling on the wayside. So moving on to the recommendation, the paramount issue is there needs to be someone that can guide those priorities and deadlines and make sure that those things are being done in just the different intervals that they need to happen. Observation 3, this is something that really spoke a lot to me, is that staff even comments that there's a lack of cross-training, and that does pose a significant risk, and particularly payroll. Your financial analyst is doing a great job of payroll, but there are problems with just, if he were to go, that is a very complex and important cycle for the city. There needs to be some level of cross-training. Not to mention the personal element of this is you have now a staff that is so burdened with one part of a job where they have to now plan just, going on vacation and things like that. And that does put, if you can imagine, some personal stress on the employees. So the recommendation that we would have for this would to be implement a structured cross-training program. In our report, to maintain segregation duties, you want someone outside of the payroll process, ideally like someone in accounts payable, to, on occasion, every few months, perform the cycle, make sure that they are up to speed on it, make sure that you also document all these processes for, we work in a very tight and demanding labor market. If that person does go, you have written procedures and you are able to pass those off as a training tool for that next person. Observation 4 is we did notice, as Kelly mentioned, that the finance staff do have roles outside of the finance department. As those roles ebb and flow, it takes their time that they have in a week towards those other tasks. It diverts responsibilities and attention to those tasks. And with such a demanding job, it's not unlikely that they can fall behind on things depending on how big those get. The recommendation, of course, would be with such, limitations, not with the finance staff, but with other departments, there should be some cooperation with the city manager to look at the field as a whole and figure out, okay, what is finance doing that's outside the realm, and how can we maybe better spread out and have them build a more supporting role to make sure that the city's getting the things they need done, but finance also has the ability to be that central department for the city. Moving on to observation 5. When we started looking at some of the financial records, the one thing that kind of stuck out right away was the bank and investment reconciliation. While it was, in a sense, reconciled, there were many months of unposted transactions that needed to be done. Right now, it's currently being performed by a third-party consultant, and that third-party consultant has provided over staff a list of missing general ledger entries, deposits, inquiries on voided checks. Those delays mean that you will have inaccurate financial reporting from a cash basis, but you're also from a missing transaction perspective. And there is a reliance on a third-party consultant for those reconciliations, and those delays just kind of indicate that there's a lot of monthly and year-end closing issues. It's kind of like a canary in a coal mine, getting ready for those year-end closes, which are so important for your deadlines. Recommendation would be to have, ideally, someone in a leadership position, like the finance director, lead the team to basically say, okay, we're going to get these ones done this today. These ones are going to be done the next day, to get that backlog completed, and then to build a long-term transition plan to bring that back in-house. Now, I'm not saying that happens immediately. As I pointed out with other observations, there is limited resources, so that has to be planned, and that transition has to take place where the consultant can also pass on information to the finance department. Observation number 6, more on the accounting records. We did notice that there was investment interest that had not been allocated, currently sitting in the general fund, and also for those reconciliations that we saw, there were unposted transactions. That presents a lot of issues. Again, there's that constant thing of there's delay and some inaccurate reporting going on. Those need to be done at those monthly, quarterly at the latest intervals to have each fund have its share of the interest. Otherwise, when you look at your financial reports, it's going to look a little topsy-turvy, and then when those finally do get posted, you're going to see a lot of movement between those funds. So the recommendation would be to record those missing interests and to complete those allocations for definitely for your year-end close, and then to formalize a regular allocation process where ideally someone at a more technical level, like the finance analyst, is preparing that, and then it's being reviewed by a more senior level of a senior accountant or a finance director. Observation number 7, this came about through this observations and inquiries. We looked at various reconciliations that were being done. One of them that was sent was the accounts receivable. While not a significant balance in the whole, presented an issue where it was being tracked manually in an Excel sheet, and looking at that Excel sheet, it was hard to discern what was the actual balance. When we compared that to the general ledger, it obviously didn't reconcile, but also the prevalence of manual reconciliations and reporting presents a risk of human error. As you're putting these things together, there's not only the potential of error, but also your limited resources are now basically recreating reports that go into Excel. Our recommendation would be to really utilize the system to its maximum capabilities to track and reconcile accounts receivable and all other balances for that matter on a recurring basis of monthly or latest quarterly. We really want to reduce the amount of additional effort that staff puts into any sort of reporting element. And that will come into play with another observation that we have down the road. Observation number 8 is more to do with purchase orders and how they relate to reporting. So during one of the walkthroughs for accounts receivable, I noticed that purchase orders were not part of the overall process. And so the inquiry with that is identify your purchase order threshold is 3,000, but that threshold does not exist if the city council has approved a contract. And how this all plays together, because this is a common terminology here, but encumbrances now are not in your system. Basically, the obligation to spend money is missing from your financial reports. What that would lead to is if you looked at a line item and say, I have this much budget, this much spending, you're missing all the purchase orders that you have associated with vendors, so your available balance is overstated likely. Recommendation for that would be to eliminate that nuance of if it's a contracted service that's approved by the city council, it gets into the system. You need those in the system to have an accurate view of what spending and what resources you have available. Observation number 9 has to do with monthly financial reports. What we went through with that was we actually identified a system report that's produced, but then it's put into a more preferred format, if you will. Again, I won't repeat it, but there is that a risk of error, but also there is a use of time to create those reports. If you can skip to the next slide, this is a screenshot of the report. The report that you see in the system, although it may not look beautiful, it does provide the accurate information from the financial system without manipulation. What it does miss on there is an adopted budget, which I can tell you from my years as finance director, once that adopted budget is passed, you don't much care about it. You worry about your amended budget, the budget you have as a working document. This report, in my eyes, would serve all the needs, and we want to reduce any excessive use of time spent creating additional reports. And that's essentially the recommendation, and I'm happy to answer questions along with Kelly Telford.
While we have this page up, so both of you have been finance directors in other cities. Is this the type of report that our code says that we have to have a monthly report out of the state of the finances for council as well as for the public? Is this the type of report that you would have submitted to your council and the public?
I would, Kelly?
Absolutely.
Just like this?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So a part of the reason that this is beneficial, straight out of the system, it's super timely, is because that budget amount on July 1st of every year, it's your adopted budget. On July 2nd, it changes, or it should change, because we should have purchase orders that get rolled over, budgets that roll over. We have budget amendments at the very beginning of the year that relate to the rollover transactions from the prior year, which I don't think are actually happening here. And that's okay. That's not a compliance issue. But that budget column, if you haven't had any amendments, it's still your adopted budget. So that budget is actually more important than your adopted budget will ever be. Your public works director, when he needs to award a contract, if you've had a $300,000 amendment to the budget during the year, he needs to know that because he has appropriation authority to be able to bring a contract to you for approval. And if we're solely focusing on the adopted budget, he won't know that. This right here will tell him how much is available to appropriate at any given time, and it's available at the drop of the hat out of the current system. Yes, ma'am.
I have several questions. Obviously, this is kind of up my alley. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. How many hours did you put in, and who did you speak with, and how did you decide who to talk to?
So the number of hours that were put in were many. They weren't all based on interviews. They were based on an analysis of the information that based on the roles and responsibilities of each position. Noah and I actually spent quite a bit of time back in the office analyzing the data after Noah was out here meeting with the team. He can go into further details of who he met with. But my understanding, it was probably all but the consultant that does the bank rec.
Yep.
Because the person that does the bank rec, it's a finite responsibility. It's not a lot of responsibilities beyond that. It was understanding not only what was provided to us in the worksheets of responsibilities, but what should be done in an ideal state. These observations do not represent ideal state. These are merely our initial observations based on conversations and the analysis that we performed.
You referenced the fact that we don't have a current accounts receivable ledger or aging and doesn't exist in the system apparently. You're also aware there's no accounts payable nor accounts receivable ledger. They're not utilizing those functions in the system. Did that come to your attention?
So for accounts payable for a city, we don't normally see an accounts payable subsidiary ledger have a balance until June 30th. Most organizations, I totally agree, it's a little bit different than most corporations see.
Try making sure that we have liquidity.
I 100% understand. I've done the cash forecasting for other organizations and it's a challenge for governments. One of the biggest challenges is that a city does not do accrual basis reporting until the end of the fiscal year. That is normal. That's important to understand. I know it's not ideal for most of those on this council, but it's normal. A huge piece of that is because we focus so much on what we call current resources, current sources and uses, meaning revenue we currently have and money that's currently going out. So we really focus on short term in government, which in your position you focus on long term, which I understand the challenge.
Well, not really long term. It would help me to get an accounts payable aging without 60 days.
Well, your AP aging is going to be your outstanding checklist from the bank reconciliation. Now, that requires bank reconciliations to be kept current and timely. And with this team, it's very challenging. The amount of responsibilities on this team are tremendous.
Understood.
And they're doing what they can to stay current on paying the bills, paying the employees, addressing the current needs that are problems today. And the hardest part, I speak at conferences about bank reconciliations. And every auditor that's listening, if there are any, are going to shoot me. But bank reconciliations provide absolutely no purpose in a finance department, other than to say, you got all the transactions. They're not a tool that we use to make decisions today. As long as they're kept up to date, all it is a control to make sure that we have everything in the bank.
But But there are also legal requirements.
There are.
Regarding
Let's keep this
checks.
to
Yeah.
questions and not
Well,
debate.
Yeah, but, so you, how many, you talked to the staff, current staff? Including the interim finance director who was not involved at all in the day-to-day?
Yeah, we spoke to all the finance staff, including the consultant, and we also spoke to some other department heads, just to make sure that we try to get as much of a comprehensive view as we can with the limited number of hours that we have.
Did you speak to any former employees or, for example, other consultants? We had a consultant in to do budgets and help with the audit.
We spoke to Robert.
Samario?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Because, I mean, nobody has been around very long.
Yeah, and
Or
that's-
one person has, but none of them have, really any history. They're still kind of getting up to speed.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there, but yes, to your point, I think the longest tenured employee is maybe, I think it's either a year and a half or 2 years at the most, the finance analyst, yes. So and that is definitely part of the challenge that a lot of the things that happen is for that high turnover, lack of training. Mentioned in one of the observations, like a cross-training program would be paramount in some of these cases where you will have people performing a duty that is outside of their role. And even just by that itself, if you didn't have documentation, if the other person left, well, I performed it a few times, I can at least get you off the ground running. Or to commend the finance staff, they are a lot of times filling in situations where there is requirements.
It's a fire drill.
Exactly.
And the system's so underutilized.
Hey, David, let's do some council questions, and
Sorry.
then if you still have questions, we can come back to you, David.
My questions are more focused. First of all, I applaud you for your work. I think the limited, I know it's a number of hours, but it's a limited number of time that you spent on this situation. You've identified a tremendous amount of concerns that I see as a professional in the financial community. As a matter of fact, I'm very much concerned about what I see in this report. And I want to know from you what your thoughts are, is how we can triage our situation. We are now almost 6 months past, or 5 months past fiscal year end, and we're nowhere close to closing the books. You're telling me that the financial reports probably are not worth the paper they're written on. The reconciliations, albeit may have been done, but they're not adjustments to the general ledgers or for the investment accounts or the cash accounts haven't been made. And I don't know what else might be in there until you really do a scrub of our systems. And I think we are far beyond the timeline that we should have our books closed. I'm not doing anything to their existing staff because I know fully well that they've got more responsibilities and time than we have. We need incremental resources. So how do we get there?
Based on what we're seeing as of right now, your staff doesn't have time to go backwards. They're so focused on just trying to get through day to day and keep the city moving forward. There isn't enough time in the day, even if they were working double time, to be able to go back and close the 2024 books. Some of those transactions are probably going before June 30th, which is totally normal. The short answer is the team needs help. The long answer, I'm gonna put my finance director hat on for a second. I would love to see someone come in and be able to teach the team. They don't know what they don't know. And I would love to be able to see some leadership in the team to say, this is best practices for a month-end close, so we can make sure our monthly reporting is reliable. This is what a year-end close structure would normally look like, and let's make sure that we, dot our i's and cross our t's, and that our year-end close is complete, because ultimately that's going to make it easier for next year. I would love to be able to see some opportunities for really utilizing some of the staff better. I think there's opportunity to elevate some of the work being done by some of the folks, and have the right work at the right levels, but that's prospective. I think if we look backwards to get you updated through June 30th, I think you guys need help. And this is quite normal. We work with a lot of organizations. The best part of my job is coming in and helping folks just like you. We do this all day long with a lot of organizations, and it's becoming very common in the industry.
Before we jump into the solution, I actually have a few questions about the report. And I want to get to the solutions, but I'm trying to reconcile conflicting information that I hear, that I see and whatnot. So my understanding was that the reconciliations for FY '24 were complete and that was all done. And the report says that in fact, they aren't done. So what is missing? And because that's going to be a key component in order to close the books and move on with the audit. And here we are in November and we haven't started the audit. So what's going on with reconciliations?
So I assume we're talking bank reconciliation.
Yes.
Okay. So the reconciliation component has been preliminarily complete. So when we conduct the bank reconciliations, there's two pieces. We do a preliminary bank rec to identify any of the differences between the banks and the GL, and then vice versa, between the GL and the banks. All that is a fact-finding mission to identify what the differences are. That piece has been completed, from what we can tell for all of the months. However, once that happens, there's a next step. It's to identify what journal entries need to be posted for anything that was recorded in the bank that didn't post to the general ledger. And then to confirm the timing difference of anything that posted to the general ledger that hasn't hit the bank yet, to make sure it's not something that needs to be reversed and truly will hit the bank in a future month. That's the component that doesn't appear to have been completed, which means there's ultimately going to be journal entries that will need to be posted to the GL that could increase or decrease the cash balances in those general ledger reports in that sample bank.
For the whole year?
Yes.
So
It appears that way. Again, this is an assessment. We have not come in to do an audit. We have not confirmed any information from a year-end close perspective like we normally would if we were brought in to do accounting. But based on our observations and based on the conversations with the team, we were provided with reconciliations that appear to still need additional adjustments.
Okay, because I've been informed that in fact those have been done, so maybe I'm getting.
May I speak on what I suspect might be happening with the difference in communication?
Okay.
And this is where I was saying, I would love to see some leadership and some, it's not something from the current staff that's problematic. I think it's just something that when you're a director, you look at things a little bit differently. I think in staff's eyes, they are reconciled, and they're reconciled to the penny from what I can remember. That's a good thing, but not everyone realizes there's another step. So I think that might have been where some of that miscommunication is. And if there was someone in place who was leading the team, and we say that accountability, and we don't mean accountability in a bad way. We mean that in a good way, to be able to help the team learn and progress and rise, really. I think that really is where that miscommunication came in, because I just think that that last step, which is a very small step, can have big impacts if those are a good number of adjustments.
Right, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that we've got the right findings before we do a solution. I have one other question.
Well, let me just comment, because it ties to, I agree with what I was under the impression too that everything was done. What I was surprised at is the fact that the general ledger hadn't been adjusted pursuant to the reconciliations.
Well, I had been told that it happened, so that's why I'm.
Well, that was.
That's why I just want to make sure we're clear on where current is, and so that's why I'm asking the question. The other question is, I know you reviewed the org chart, and while we haven't updated, I don't think we've updated the org chart. My understanding was that we've moved HR and we've moved IT out of what used to be city support services, and it just now have it as finance department. And in your findings, you find that there are still non-finance related activities going on, and I'm curious what those are.
That might be more
Might be a Carrie question.
for the city manager to respond. I will say, just from my experiences, that even though the org chart changes, there's a transition period, especially if staff have been performing those duties for a while, but I'll let Cindy confirm.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's just legacy things, Madam Mayor, it's, for example, I mean, silly little things. You need a new cell phone. Ron and Luke were the only ones who knew how to do that. So we can now taught somebody else how to do that. But that takes 3 hours of sitting on hold with Verizon. That's just one small example. So I'm glad that this made the list because it's something that I think was really burdening the team. And we're constantly, whenever we identify one of those things, special events, they were in charge of special events for a while.
Right,
We've gotten rid of that.
right, okay, well,
Gave
that's
special
helpful.
events to the mayor, because we didn't have anyone else to give them to. So,
Is it,
That's helpful, because I wanted to make sure that
Yeah, I
we're
mean-
operating off current information.
I would say that we could find something tomorrow that we didn't know that one of them was.
Okay, cool. Michael?
Am I correct in saying that the IT vendor is handling, other than the cell phones? I think we were talking about, setting up new computers, whatever else. That's outsourced, correct? Or are there hands on site?
So, okay, yes, it's outsourced, as we know. But for example, at some point, somebody that worked in finance that no longer works here onboarded the new city hall phone system. So not a lot of people know how to use that. I think Ron inherited some of those responsibilities. We use our IT person to help with that. And then sometimes, a computer's not working or something's weird, like just now, our chief of police flopped out, and that happened all the time. Usually Brian from finance kind of knows how to plug in the cables that know how to make things work. So it's not something that's, it's something we're aware of.
I don't mean to get into and monopolize the IT piece of the conversation. This part of this conversation should continue, because it should be the heck out of finance.
Well, yes.
Yeah,
Well, I think part of what he's talking about, though, is when you work as part of a team.
Yes, teamwork.
If you have special information that a teammate needs, you go help the teammate. So,
Right, but in one sense, that's wonderful for helping the teammate, but it also doesn't actually solve the problem.
Well, let me see if I can put a pin on it. Since probably that finding was identified and written, we've onboarded 2 new staff members. One in HR and one as an afternoon receptionist. A lot of the things we just talked about have been given to those people.
Cool. One other related question. You talked about items, I have good enough knowledge about accounting, but I am not him. What items could affect cash that are not posted from the reconciliations, other than checks that have not cleared?
Biggest one is gonna increase your cash. It's gonna be direct deposits into the city's checking account that are ACHs that auto post, a lot of times from the state of California, maybe from the county.
Right.
Those,
Interest.
putting in place a daily cash process will help catch some of that. On the other side of it, it could be voided checks that get voided in the software and reissued, but don't get voided in the bank. There's a lot of different instances of the variances. It's part of why most people don't understand that a government agency's bank reconciliation is, other than capital assets, fixed assets, it is probably the most complex tasks a finance department does, because we operate in a pooled cash system, meaning we have a whole lot of money flowing through usually 1 or 2 bank accounts, and trying to keep that money accounted for separately becomes a very big headache. The 2 things that we work on the most from a consulting department are pool cash and capital assets.
Victoria, did you have some questions?
Probably more comments. Okay, all this?
Yeah, so I want to go back to, I'm trying to figure out, it was a question. I know you're working on, this is preliminary results. You've got to fit.
Public comment first?
Yeah,
Before
we
get
could
into
do that, we could do that. Any public comment on this? Martin?
Yeah.
And then,
questions.
you need to come to the, and get your 3 minutes.
I just had questions for the consultants. I was,
And can you put up the microphone so we can catch you on the video? Thank you.
what's just kind of my fingers here, what it sounds like I'm hearing from you guys is that the top of the firing order would be staffing? Yes or no? Or you can comment on this, please. And the second thing seems to be procedural, like maybe documenting procedures and then making individuals accountable for that. Those are my only questions.
Okay, any other public comment on this? Ron, you wanted to make some?
Yes, Mayor and City Council members, if I may, I just wanted to mention on their assessment that I concur with, in general, what was said, but there's a couple items I think I want to clarify. And the budget report that's shown on the screen, that is not the report that is provided to City Council or to staff. That report that's up there is a generated report. I created a template that does delineate between the original budget amendments, and the actual budget amendment that's approved by council. So I know that it's been said that this is time consuming, but it is reader friendly. It provides an accurate information of where we are budget wise to actuals. The only component that I feel is missing that was brought up was the encumbrances that need to be with the purchasing policy of $3,000, which would include contracts.
Okay. Was that it?
How much time does it take to take the base export that comes out of the software and use the template and update it?
It doesn't, that report, like was mentioned, does not separate the original budget from budget amendments.
Right.
So I created a template based on other softwares that I use, like Title Units does provide an export that actually separates the original budget from any budget amendments. And I created my own template in Excel spreadsheet that I share with council and staff.
Right, but when you have to get the data out of the existing application, because we don't have Title Units, when you pull the data out of that software and have to update it in your template, how much time does that take you? In other words, is the juice worth the squeeze, is what I'm trying to get to?
Well, the template's already created, the formulas are there, it's just a matter of dumping the data in there, and it populates.
And how long does it take you to, whenever you, right, you're gonna have
For the month,
do-
to prepare a monthly report.
Yeah, you're gonna do a monthly
I would
report.
say the revenues are not even an hour. I would say I probably spend about maybe an hour and a half on the expenditures.
So 2.5 to 3 hours.
Maybe, yeah, two.
Right, thank you.
What about the, other than the general ledger? Because all we see are general ledger reports. I mean, the general fund, excuse me, general fund reports. What about the other funds? Those addressed?
We don't get reports on those.
Right.
So it's actually pretty common for a council to only be given general ledger reports.
General fund.
General
Sorry,
fund reports.
general fund reports. Usually the other reports come at mid-year and adopted budget timeframe to where it really makes sense, because so many of them are capital project related that I can run you a report today and it's gonna tell you one story, and tomorrow we're gonna pay $800,000 invoice, and it will tell you a very different story. The general fund, being the main operating fund, really is the more meaningful piece of it. The system is capable of running a full general ledger summary and producing it. It's just not really helpful information. It ends up being a lot more to digest than is really necessary, but it can be produced.
Okay, so we were coming back to, so you've done this preliminary report, you still have more you want to do. We are impatient. I think that's where Dilbert now. And so the question is, you've identified things we need to do. Staff clearly needs help and support. So,
You're gonna
what,
make
Let me-
comments before he jumps in.
did you?
Yeah, that you can, yeah. This would be a good time, since I held my comments.
All right.
So, yeah, I feel, obviously, you have a lot of, your observations here, which are all, valid for sure, valid observations. I'd say, I don't know, did you tell us something we didn't already know? Well, in more detail, for sure. I think even in your report, you say, oh, hey, you went back and looked at the audit findings and found a consistency there. So, there's definitely a theme. I think one of the themes that keeps popping up in your observations and your recommendations is kind of this role of the finance director and the leadership and the people, setting the direction for the department. I mean, the one thing I would say is that, and you mentioned our finance director is a consultant, but in my mind, they're not really a finance director. They were really hired for specific project-based work. And so that to me is, if we think, oh, hey, tweak that and somehow we're gonna get that. So where David's gonna head, so I'll segue to David, but so of course, what's the path forward? And while, you got down into the weeds here, which is great. I mean, do you need to go further or more weeds? I don't think so. I mean, I think we know what our problems are, so I probably wouldn't spend a ton of more time figuring out how many weeds we have, and I'd rather like to know. And yeah, start whacking the weeds. But yeah, I'd really rather focus on the path forward. I hear you both saying, oh, this is preliminary, we still want to get in there. Like, well, I don't know how much more of that we need, because you pretty much hit all to me, I think you hit a couple kind of minor points that I probably wouldn't spend a ton of time on, and, if you have 9 observations, I think you can pick 4 of these or 5 of these, and probably, you have your 80-20 rule probably for improvement. But so sorry, Dave, I know David, you'll jump on that too, but what's the path forward?
I mean,
Without having to wait to hire a finance director.
So there's a couple of paths forward. From public comment, I will take your top issues. Definitely the top issues is staffing, and you really don't have time to wait to hire staff. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't hire staff. It just means we need a Band-Aid for right now to get us caught up and support as quickly as we can. That usually comes in the form of either interim staffing, which are available through more temp agencies. We are not a temp agency. I call it warm body in a chair. We don't do the warm body in a chair. We do more of the expert level, get in, crunch the numbers, hit it hard and get out. Very similar to an audit, but we reverse engineer.
So you wouldn't have a finance director someone who could come in and do kind of what you said, you wish you could have that training, or you don't have a part of your organization that comes in and kind of jumps in, fixes things up and then leaves?
We do. It's in a little bit of a different, scenario. So the work that we do tends to be one of 2 different types of work. We do project-based work where a client has an urgent need, maybe it's staffing issues, maybe year-end close was better than they thought, or they had a system change. And we come in, we supplement, we get through year-end close, and we move on. About 40% of the remainder of the work that our team does is, I'll call it outsourced staffing, not interim staffing. And it really isn't to replace a finance department. I don't personally believe in fully outsourcing a city's finance department. Call it the former finance director in me. We believe in supplementing the team in whatever role that is, and being able to help guide the city to that ideal state. And then once you're in ideal state, depending on a city's needs, maintain it. So we have a number of organizations that we do 100% full outsourcing for, where their accounts payable, where their payroll, we do all their month-end closes, we prepare everything for audit, and they only have a city manager. That's it. They have other staff, but no finance team.
But you wouldn't do like a short-term executive in residence finance director. It would have to be like something that would.
The challenge is when you do.
Let me make a couple of comments. What we need at the moment is not one individual, but we need a combination of a number of different skill sets in a triage mode to get our books closed for June 30th, 24. I think that ought to be the number one priority. And then as that gets done and the PVCs and everything for the auditors are set up, we can have further discussions about what level of support, if any, this community will need from the outside, or whether we're able to hire people. But number one is we've got to triage all of 5, 6, 8, whatever months that we have to go back to get to June 30 figured out, and then be able to walk that forward to the current fiscal year so that we understand where we are. We're gonna be into mid-budgeting before they're gonna be able to, if they can come in and triage this stuff, we're gonna be already planning for next fiscal year. So time is of the essence, in my candid opinion. This bank reconciliation, investment reconciliation, I was in the same boat you were, Don. I thought, when I heard that, immediately I went, yes, that means it's reconciled to the general ledger and postings that have been done. But those are things that need to go back and be revisited, because the financial statements, I believe, that we're receiving today, I'll go out on the limb as a financial person, they're not accurate. And I don't think they're reliable, and we need to get to a point where we understand where we are, especially if we've got fiscal needs in this community going forward, and we can't even do a long-range plan until we have a baseline as to where we stand.
That's a bold claim.
Our
financial statements are accurate.
I think that's true.
a fact.
That's a fact.
That's a fact. $1.3 million of interest went unreported through the end of June.
We are in serious trouble, and we've been kicking the can down the road, and what my particular request would be to the city manager to request assistance ASAP, and if we need to have emergency meetings to get in a contract approved, we've got to retain skill sets, and I think LSL's got their understanding of our situation, and their, if they've got the availability, we need to bring them on as soon as humanly possible.
Can I take a quarter of a step back? Not that I'm.
An eighth.
Okay, an eighth. Okay, I'll go with 16. I'm pretending I know math. As I understand the potential path forward, and I'm gonna go for 1. It's number 1, triage and resolve open issues, prep for an audit, clean it up, right? 2 is evaluate and implement best practices, org structure, work with the city manager, processes, best practices, internal controls, right? I think those 2 things, although not simple, would put Carrie in a position to then go recruit an effective finance director and be in a position where you could say to a potential finance director, our house is in order, and it's not going to be a free-for-all, and you're in a position to come lead our team because we've cleaned up our house. Is that what I understand? It's not what I missed.
No, I would agree. I think one of the challenges, so I've worked at large cities and I've worked at smaller cities. One of the challenges with a city of your size is your director, your figurative director, is a working director. That is important in any small city. I'm sure your public works director is a working director as well.
Yeah, it's just budget reality. Yeah.
And the hardest part is you often have applicants who are spectacular and have tremendous resumes and accomplishments, and they would do amazing if they had a staff of 20. But they're not quite prepared to be working directors. That is one of the challenges that's unique to a smaller organization.
So how do other cities work through that? Is it a combination? I realize I'm buying into you pitching services, and that's where I'm going.
No, I have a lot of ideas that don't involve us at all.
I meant that as a positive. I wasn't repeating at all. How do other cities handle that? What's sort of the best practice in this size? Fully recognizing inflation, hiring challenges, people leaving the public sector for private, all those things that are going on that we all know about. We're not unique, and then add our geographic location and potential other challenges. How do we best work through that in the longer term? I mean, obviously, I think we've laid out what we need to do in the shorter term.
I would agree, for the short term.
Right, so as you approach that longer term, how do other cities address that challenge of, geez, I can't afford a top level, very high dollar, amazing finance director. I saw another city nearby that's recruiting, I will not name the name, I mentioned it to him. And the finance director in that city is very, very well compensated. and probably would lead a team of 20, right?
The bigger city.
Or bigger than 20. In this scenario, what do other cities of this size do, particularly because we are not entirely a contract city?
I think the goal, the long-term goal, is to get the city to a place where you do have the team and they are supporting the city without the use of outside resources. I see a lot of organizations doing on-call contracts very similar to how Public Works and Community Development tend to do on-call contracts. So that when they have staffing challenges, they can easily tap into those resources. But that also helps give your future finance department a little bit of solace that when times do get really busy and maybe they do lose someone, there's help that's already there to tap into. I think long-term, a lot of organizations of your size are looking into perhaps more of a finance manager position. And maybe that's overseen by like an admin services director that does a little bit more than just the finance side. I'm seeing that in some of my organizations that we're working with right now.
We actually started going down that road, and it created more challenges and more dependence on one individual. And when that individual departed, we're still going through that recovery. Yeah.
The other thing that I'm starting to see we've been asked to do some of this is we call in the commercial world, we call it fractional CFO.
Yeah.
We're starting to see some traction with like a fractional finance director.
That makes sense.
It hasn't caught on tremendously in local government. It tends to be more in our rural clients. I have a client back in Texas, very rural. I'm going to shout out to Marfa, Texas, because y'all have probably heard of the city. They have a city manager. They have a great accounting team, and that accounting team does fantastic keeping up with day-to-day. The utility bills go out, the accounts payable bills get paid, and all the people get their paychecks. But the challenge is they can't retain or attract talent that has high-level government accounting experience. So we are their fractional CFO. I actually hold the finance director title. And we do month-end closes for them. We work very closely with their team to support their general ledger software. I am in the middle of fighting with Tyler Technologies on implementing their full cash module. But we're there as support because they don't have the ability to have a higher level expert on their team. They supplement with our team to be able to help, which means today when the utility bills need to go out, their team has someone by their side making sure everything is good to go.
Well, and that was where I was going when I asked about what you're able to do in terms of supplementing. So maybe there's a nuance there about being in the seat or not being in the seat, but.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different because we don't attend leadership meetings for internal department head meetings. We don't attend all the city council meetings. It's a little bit different than what you would think from a proportionate, finance director. But it fulfills the needs of the city. And we actually do it probably six organizations. And it's growing. I mean, we've got probably 6 more that our proposals are out and they're asking us to add them to our clients. It really is growing more in your rural communities, but it's because they're smaller, just like yourselves.
So getting, kind of synthesizing, Victoria commented about you've done, a lot of weed work, and do we need more weed work? And we heard David talking about triaging, and Michael's talked about kind of both short and long-term needs. So we've got this immediate need to close FY24 and get the audit going and completed. It sounds like that's one area where you could help us. We've got another kind of medium-term need of trying to shore up the staffing and procedures and the
Address
racing
audit
charts
deficiencies.
and all that stuff. And then we've got kind of a longer-term need of how do we institutionalize and get a kind of achieve a equilibrium where we're actually able to operate. So with those 3 needs, I think the primary need right now is to close the books and get the audit going. And so how do we get to where we need to go to without having to have this conversation again in January and all that? I mean, how do we, get some movement?
And I'm curious what the city manager thinks about all this.
I agree with everything I've heard tonight. I started off this conversation, this item. What?
You said, I agree with everything said tonight. My response was, let's go home.
I started off this item talking about how a similar sort of success stories that we've used, right? So since I've been here since March, we're finding these key areas of our city, and we all knew finance was a big one that just needed a restructuring and stabilization, and we move forward. And you heard our consultant, who's been here a very short amount of time, quickly identified probably the biggest challenge is that the current team is just constantly putting out fires day after day, hour after hour. And it was really important to me that was recognized. I wrote it in my staff report. What do I think we need to move forward? I think we need to get a proposal from LSL. We don't need to start over with somebody else. They've put some time and energy into this place. The one meetings you didn't talk about, Noah, is the 6 or 7 we had remotely over the last 2 months. But so they're here, they're in, they put the time in. Let's get them in. I don't know what the end solution looks like.
When you say let's get them in.
So I would like to.
We've got these kind
Right.
of 3 buckets. Are you talking
So I would
about
like. So we've been talking about.
looking backwards and cleaning up?
Yes, so I just, about tonight, I wrote down 4 things I think need to happen. Not even associated with cleaning up or restructuring. We need to close out the year. We need to do the audit, get the audit going. We need to sort of be our audit agent, be like our side to work with the auditors. We need to bring in mid-year because you guys didn't get a mid-year budget last year. And then we need, right away, we need to start working on the next year's budget. And so I would like to get a proposal for them to take that leadership. Maybe it's a monthly, I don't know, we'll work out a structure to bring to the council. At the same time, I'd love to get our staff trained. Love to start setting them up for success. And then what was the last piece I had? And then, in the end, set us up and maybe even help us recruit a finance director. To Councilmember Kemp's point, let's not turn this mess over to somebody else who will then fail. Let's use their team to clean us up and get us ready to succeed. This has been working. We've been doing this. This is a big one that we can do it on. We talked earlier tonight about doing it with public works. These are not fun things that city managers bring to the council, but this is important. So let's all of us look at it head on and do it. Go ahead.
Oh, I said, can you say how you found, how did we, I guess I shouldn't have answered this question. How did we come to be working with LSL as opposed to other firms?
Councilmember McGowan recommended them.
Well, wait a minute, I thought they were referred by the existing auditors.
They were, yeah.
Were they? I heard.
LSL also were our auditors.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe 10 to 20.
Yeah, I know the agency.
Yeah, I heard Vasquez was.
Okay, Vasquez, I heard.
Well, they were before Vasquez, I believe.
No,
So, but that's
Well, okay, so that's a little bit of a slippery slope because we didn't have, any kind of a search process. We had one name, we worked with the one name, although the work's been great. So, I mean, I get, we. Like you said,
Well, I was.
You told us anything you didn't know, but then to have somebody who does the assessment then be hired for the follow-on work without any kind of RFP, okay, I think we have to be very, very clear on what we're hiring them to do.
Absolutely, and so, the point of tonight was to identify this. I fully anticipated that we'd be asked to bring something back to all of you. So let us get started on that. Let us work with the city attorney to bring a proposal. I don't know if it's gonna hit all the items, but let's get them in, let's get them hear more, let's develop some resources and see where it goes. I don't think, to all of your points, we can do anything other than fully invest into this.
So,
Have to.
the one thing I want to be careful of is you identified 4 pretty big buckets. I mean, 2 of them are connected with the closing the end year and getting the audit going. You know, it takes time for companies to draft a proposal and to address all the different things. I want to make sure that the getting them to weigh in on the whole enchilada, including mid-year budget and full budget, doesn't slow down our ability to get somebody in to close the year end and get the audit.
I mean, that's
going.
pretty
So
much what I
maybe
was saying.
Just, you know, focus
Just
on that first and
Yeah.
let's get going.
That's, I mean.
That's it.
I just, like I said, I did bullet points as we were sitting, I was listening and thinking.
Yeah.
So,
I think if
How do we
you're,
do that before Christmas?
That's the other piece of, you can't wait till
No,
January.
we can't wait. This
this
is,
is, yeah,
how quickly can you get a proposal into Carrie's hands?
Basically on closing year end and getting the audit underway.
And we'll deal with the future later.
Because there's a lot of conversation on the table, I probably would do an all-in scope proposal that allows the city manager to determine the actual work plan, so that if something needs to be added or taken away, we can without having to go through contract amendments. That's pretty easy. I actually just presented that to another client last week. So I can use that. I could probably turn a proposal around by the end of the day tomorrow.
Whoa, that'd be great. And then if we have a proposal come back, when can we get it before the council to, because I assume it's gonna be over your approval authority.
Could you turn that around for the December 10th meeting?
I don't think I have much of a choice, so yes.
Because I think it's critical that we're not gonna get any work done between now and January 1st because of the holidays and in this cleanup and triage situation. But come Jan 1, we gotta be full speed ahead.
Well, I actually would expect that if council could approve a contract December 10th, that they better
Better
show
start
up
working.
December 11th.
Well, if they've got the staffing available, that's fine. If they've got to schedule their staff.
Right, but that's part of why we're pushing to get this moving.
Exactly.
Or motivated, can you tell?
Just to temper expectations, there's actually a pretty hefty IT lift to get us full access to be able to do everything. Usually takes just a little bit, so we're probably able to launch resources just before the holiday to at least get everybody on board, if you were to approve it.
We've got great IT.
Michael will take it on personally. No, I will not.
Okay, anything else we need to cover, or Carrie, do you have what you need for us?
I mean, give me that proposal.
Yep.
Text me when you send it.
Happy to.
I'll read it over turkey.
I'll push
You can do it on Black Friday.
Oh, I'm shopping.
Thank you so much.
I
Thanks.
want to thank both of you guys for
yeah,
not only coming over here, but all the work we've been doing. And I love the enthusiasm and the positive attitude of being able to see us through this quagmire.
We're happy to help. Thank you.
Good presentation. Thank you. All right, agenda item number 7, consideration of our paid parking
I will handle this
program. I
one.
guess it's a study.
Good evening again. So, be real quick, we have somebody, there she is, in the audience, thanks for hanging in there. But, just by way of background for the council and the community, July of 2023, the city kicked around the idea of looking at paid parking as a potential revenue solution and maybe manage some of the parking challenges in a couple of locations. For whatever reason, that just sort of died out. There was 3 proposals received. Earlier this year in October, council asked staff to take another look at it. We went back to those 3 groups that proposed and 2 did propose again. Staff had a chance to meet with 2 of the groups, Walker Consultants and Dixon Resources Unlimited. Dixon is here tonight. Dixon is the one that if the council would like to move forward, staff would recommend. A couple of things, their proposal includes, they review the municipal code, parking utilization data collection, take a look at hard parking, financial modeling, revenue forecasting, and then any policy updates that we needed. In addition, this is the key piece for me, is they're recommending some sort of community engagement in the form of town hall. The purpose of that is to take a look at how the community would feel about paid parking at Malaga Cove Plaza, and I don't know what to call the area.
Rat Beach.
Rat Beach, above Rat Beach parking land. That, I should have said that earlier, this is what we're looking at. I did like to note that in our conversation, we had a great conversation, there's a couple of things that were brought to my attention, I thought it was important to share with the council. It's unknown at this point, but Rat Beach specifically may involve the planning, the coastal commission. That would definitely extend our time frame. But they said upwards of a year, and I'll let Julie speak a little bit more about that. Interesting to me in our conversation as you look at paid parking is, well, if people decide not to pay to park, and they decide to pay to park somewhere else, or you're just spreading the problem out. That was an area. And then, we kind of kicked around over Zoom how much this could result in revenue. And I don't want to judge and say what is not a lot of revenue, but I'll just say I don't think it's a lot of revenue. But I don't want to put a number to it. So Dixon has been doing this, very impressive at our meetings. This is pretty much all that they do. We'll let Julie speak in a minute about it. Their proposal is $25,000, and they would give us a plan. But if it's okay with the council, maybe Julie Dixon can come up and talk a little bit more about what they do and sort of how they see this impacting Alberta States.
Excellent, thank you for having me. I actually used to work with Kelly in the city of Seal Beach. So, she was the finance director.
Was she good at it?
She was, she left us during the pandemic, and interestingly enough, Chief, I don't know if you want to hear this, we moved parking management from the finance department to the police department over there in Seal as well. So,
Thanks for that.
yeah, not volunteering anyone, but my name is Julie Dixon. I've actually been in the parking and transportation industry my entire career, almost 35 years now. I actually started as a parking enforcement officer back when I was in college at UCSB. And in Isla Vista, if you know anything about Isla Vista, still to this day, the most densely populated 1 square mile west of the Mississippi. And so back in the olden days, I had a bicycle and a ticket book. And who would have thought 30 plus years later, now we just have fancy terms like congestion mitigation and curb management. But one of the things that I really appreciated in the conversation that we had with the city manager is that one of the specialties I think that our organization works with, I call myself a parking realist, and we work with communities just like yours to figure out what is the solution for your community. And it's not always paid parking. I know that that seems like an easy fix, but the reality is if you're going into this as a money-making venture, it is the wrong game plan, because the reality when you look at things holistically, if you start to manage parking in a little niche or a little nook of the community, as the city manager mentioned, it could just push the problem to another part of the community, to a neighboring street, et cetera. So when you talk about designing a solution equitably and sustainably, you've got to look at the resources. You can't have a policy unless you have compliance. Compliance means enforcement and the resources required from that. Now here's the one benefit, is that in looking at the challenges that you have today, and I do call them challenges, because when you do have parking demand, that means people want to be here, they want to come here. But the reality is finding that right size solution for your community is something that's a very important part, and that's why we won't tackle a problem of parking unless we engage the community, because if you don't have the community at the table, the solution is not going to work. And so that's why I like to describe parking as a learned behavior. I park the way I park because that's how I've always parked. We're all parking experts because we all park our cars. And so the reality is we have to work as a group to learn about how to make incremental change and to really figure out what's the right solution. Oftentimes it could be identifying where do our employees park for the long term. That can often be one of the short-term fixes. And something that we do is we put communities on a path for a solution. And just yesterday I was in Seal Beach and we were helping, I call it Parking 101. We had 2 new council members that will take seat in January. And so we sat down with them to really kind of orient them to parking theory, just kind of like what it means, so that when they do take seat, As I'm sure you can all appreciate, parking is something that is a very sensitive touch point for many of our neighbors. And oftentimes your phones probably ring with parking complaints. If you're any different than other cities, I'd love to hear that. But oftentimes being able to prepare council for what that means, because we really want to make sure that communities like yours are also making data-driven decisions. But I could sit up here and talk about parking until I passed out. But I just am really excited about the potential of figuring out what the solution can look like. And I will just highlight with Coastal Commission, as we spoke with the city manager about, it is unpredictable in terms of the time frame. I will tell you, Coastal has a substantial backlog, but any parking management changes that occur within the coastal zone have to go before Coastal. With the experiences we've had, really making sure working hand in hand with them, even when we have conceptual ideas, so that ultimately whatever you all do, authorize or approve, then does go to Coastal. In Seal, we've been in the process right now for a little over a year. Currently, Seal Beach has the lowest beach lot rates of any city in Southern California, and we're just trying to bring the rates up to, I'll just say, fair market value, and the process is very extensive. So, city of, Ventura Harbor, they just went through, they're implementing a paid parking solution in the harbor. And that hearing went through at a pace faster than I've ever seen. It probably took just over 6 months. So again, not really a theory as to what goes fast, what doesn't go fast, but just wanted to prepare you so that if we get to that place with whatever the recommendations are, whatever's approved by council, that's another part of the journey.
Thank you.
Questions, sure.
Yeah, your proposal discusses collection of parking utilization data, and parking in our city is somewhat seasonal, especially when you go down to the beach area, but even in the Malaga Cove area, you get fewer visitors in the winter than you would in the summer. So here we are, we're just heading into the cold season. How do you deal with that in your modeling and your data collection?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things that can be done in terms of the schedule. Everything can be customized based on your needs. So being able to look forward to doing actual data collection back when we start to hit season, not a challenge to be able to make those adaptations. But also when you look at some of the, I'll call it kind of breaking up the components. When you look up here, just outside of obviously council chambers, that might be an area to be able to take some sampling so that you have some foundational data now, kind of on an average day, a normal day, and then baselining that against when we start to hit peak season. And then I don't think it comes as any surprise to us, your beach totals being what they are, you have limited spaces, so the quantities being what they are, but what we really want to do is study the implications and impacts of the surrounding area around your parking lot, because I think that that's really key. So being able to customize the schedule around that. We use two methods for data collection. We utilize license plate recognition technology, LPR technology. One of the main reasons for that is because we not only get car counts, we actually also get utilization data, which tells us how long the cars are parking for. That's also very relevant when we talk about up in this region about employee parking, because oftentimes there could be gamification opposed to time limits, things like that. So the LPR data is a real telltale sign of what's really happening authentically. It's important to recognize on the LPR side of things, we do not do any license plate lookup. We don't have that access. But what we're able to do with the data is be able to create what we call parking profiles, so that by the activity and the length of stay of the cars, you start to be able to generate a lot of additional data. And then also, when we talk about some municipalities, they actually utilize LPR for parking enforcement services. We're also able to incorporate that data as well, so that way you can aggregate additional data. So that's worked out very advantageously. But the second thing that we use is we use drones as well. And that, especially for the beach seasons, is very, very helpful. And I say this because I mentioned I started my career in Isla Vista up there in Santa Barbara. I felt very satisfied because full circle, I got to go back there. We completed a year-long study on parking and parking impacts. And one of the things, if you know anything about Isla Vista, is that if you've ever lived there, there's cars everywhere. And I was there during a summer day in summer, and I was the best because nobody's there. And I remember sitting there saying, how would somebody that doesn't experience Isla Vista understand like the impact during the school year? And that's when we brought the drones out and said a picture's worth 1,000 words. So that's actually our opportunity now, working with the legislation, working with Coastal, is being able to demonstrate what the off-peak season looks like compared to the on-peak season. And we're really hoping that that's going to drive policy for them, because it's really going to demonstrate, and that's why the drones have really become actually a necessity on all of our data collection projects, because it really helps supplement the license plate information, but then that visual is just so telling. And especially where I'm sure, you know, the neighbors and the community in that area, especially around the beach, I'm sure feel it. And so being able to have that information so that we do go forward with any recommendations, it's really a game changer for us too.
And then when you talk about unintended consequences, like people deciding to park along the streets and stuff, the recommendation would include things like whether there should be some kind of restricted parking, or
Permit parking.
like permit, or if there could be like a resident pass, kind of like what Redondo Beach is. So that would all be kind of
All of that would be tied in, time limits, all of those factors. And the one benefit that we have is, again, taking the lessons learned from all of the other communities, and to be able to take that opportunity to incorporate that so that we also don't spin our wheels or waste our time. I will share with you that Coastal Commission is all about coastal access. And so anything that we do that, restricts access. So that's important when we talk about parking management, is being able to bring that experience forward so that we don't waste our time on those opportunities, but also because we've navigated so many coastal applications, our opportunity to also, you know, at least inquire and, you know, basically make informal inquiry to see just, again, level of interest and kind of where things stand. So that's another opportunity from that experience.
Thank you. Other questions?
So one of the concerns I had was that, you know, I think the staff report and to some extent the proposal talks about kind of the, you know, Malaga Cove Plaza and then also that parking lot above. Okay, but we have other places to park in the city, you know, so I guess my concern was, I feel like those two spots were sort of almost passing comments a year and a half ago, and then somehow those became the two areas. But obviously we have another commercial area in Lenata Bay, we have the Bluff Cove Park where we get zillions of people parking in there. So would you start from, we don't want to tell you where we have what the parking congestion is. We want you to tell us. So would you be looking at the whole city?
So right now, the initiation was these two locations that were identified. What I will suggest is that the municipal code update is really key for what we'll call future proofing, because it basically allows you to really identify these two locations as maybe your initial dip our toes in the water to see what this could mean, get a feel for what your community's response is, because that truly will help set the tone for how you're going to manage resources in the future, and including the requirement for having parking enforcement resources tied in with whatever parking management changes are decided upon. For the budget that we're also talking about, that's really where you have to really kind of hone in on the scope. My suggestion would be that this would be the starting place for where you're really starting to really test the waters of what parking management could look like in the community. So
when you, sorry, I'm gonna spit out my response to that for really quick, just in collaboration. It might make sense, even if it's a slightly expanded scope of work. We're living with really surface parking in 3.5 locations, and it's all residential, you know, most of it. We had some areas that were initially intended to be commercial and they never ended up being into that. It might make sense to look at Lenata Bay, it might make sense to look at Bluff Cove. We also have parking also in the coastal zone, but there's a parking lot or two, and then there's a whole entire section of wide open coastline where there's parking everywhere. We became these very welcoming, lovely location during COVID. Let me tell you, it was amazing. We could have started our own trash company for a while. My question beyond all that is, when you look at a location, let's use Mount Cove Plaza as the example, or even the other one by the beach club. When I say beach club, the Palos Verdes Beach and Athletic Club is right at the location we're talking about, okay. When you look at those locations and you look at, in particular, let's go to the plaza, the configuration of that parking as it stands today, to your point about LPR and employees, there's some 4-hour parking, there's some 2-hour parking, there's some whatever, there's no 15-minute spaces, there's nowhere for vendors to deliver anything to say a grocery store that's there or a coffee cafe that, has to receive things in the morning, whatever. So does this encompass looking at that and also saying, we're not gonna do this, but we think that maybe you should consider splitting it up in this way, or maybe you want diagonal spaces over here, or, that goes into the public works area, I know, but does this cross over and do you say that as part of this?
It does, and I want to highlight the reason why the 2 areas were identified is because that is what we were asked to provide for.
Yeah.
And the ability to collect data in other locations, like you said, expanded scope, all potential. Again, this was kind of an opportunity to have a starting point. But when we especially look just out here at the plaza, what we would do is actually collaborate with all the departments. I should describe on a very important starting point. The first starting point of the project is something that we call an operational needs assessment. And what that basically means is we work with all the departments in the city that basically touch parking. And it first starts out internally, from the police department to public works, traffic engineering, you name it, admin, finance. We basically talk to anyone that touches parking and understand. Funnily enough, we bring a parking magic wand to all of our meetings, and we said, if you have a parking magic wand that you could change, fix, or improve anything about parking, what would you use it for in this community? And that's really where the ball starts to roll, because then we really start to get into the weeds and understanding what are the parking challenges today, what are the limitations, how we're actually managing parking as it stands today. That's your baseline to understand. Then we go into the code and understand what the limitations are that are in your code as it is written today. That's your first step before we even go outside the doors to speak to the community. Because that's then, once we have that baseline understanding of maybe where we're limited or where we're handcuffed, or where just, again, these are the resources that we have and it's the reason why it is the way it is today, to understand how that plaza was designed and why you do have the different time limits the way that they are. That's really that starting point.
There isn't enough parking is the answer to the question.
Understood, but the need for short-term parking, loading zones, I like to describe cookie cutter problems, just not cookie cutter solutions.
Sure.
Because that's one thing, going from community to community, you see a lot of the basic similar problems, but it's like what's gonna work here is not what's gonna work in another community. And that's really then where, when you have that foundational baseline, and I have to highlight importantly is making sure that you all are also apprised, you're also at that table, because you also get a lot of the calls for complaint. So that we also tend to have a workshop with all of you to be able to hear that same feedback, that magic wand exercise. That's when we then go out to the community. We've got enough information under our belts to be dangerous, like we've got everything from the inside, now we've got to go to the outside. Sometimes it can be surprising to hear the community has a completely different perspective than the internal side. And that's important to hear is, again, I've done this magic wand exercise with rooms full of 100 people, with a room of 10 people. And the neat thing about the magic wand is folks don't feel limited or constricted, and they also feel safe to be able to share their thoughts and dreams about parking. I know that sounds silly, but people have some pretty ambitious ideas of what we can do. That's then ultimately what culminates into the recommendations. We talked about the reality check. And ultimately, that's how we formulate the direction and recommendations ultimately. It could require engineering support, it could require additional work from different internal resources, but ultimately, that man sitting over against the wall over there is going to be a very important person, because anything that we talked about from a parking management perspective could require enforcement resources. We can have the whole conversation about outsourced resources. There's a lot of benefits, things that can happen. But that's, again, where the benefit of kind of how other agencies have done it and bringing in the pros and cons. I will also share, we've been able to do, I call them mutual aid agreements just because of my background, but We've been able to also collaborate with neighboring cities to leverage existing parking programs and leverage resources. I think that's something to really be cognizant of because you are surrounded by many parking operations. Not to say that that will work here, but it's been very effective in other communities where we've been able to leverage that, and it's also a really affordable solution as well. So not to solve the problem here, but that's where the toolbox comes into play, is really finding all of the opportunities of what can be in the toolbox that's gonna work for you all.
And also, I like how you sort of started it, because we have some residents that have said to us, you know, you need to explore non-tax options and other ways of, you know, bringing revenue into the city, because we're not gonna pay for all this with our parcel taxes, and, you know, nothing against visitors, we love them, but geez, could they contribute too?
Absolutely,
And
there's
I-
opportunity for seasonal rates as well.
I think, well, but I think facing the reality on what the potential revenue stream isn't, is as important as understanding what it is. Right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council before I turn to the public? No, okay, is there any public comment on this item? Yes, Mr., please,
Mr. Teacher,
introduce
Council.
yourself. Introduce yourself.
Hello, Mayor Murdoch. It's Derek Lazaro. I didn't really plan on speaking on this item, but one thought that I have, having heard some of the other very important agenda items just raised tonight, is I suspect that paid parking could become another issue that could divide our community. And I think that on the one hand, there is absolutely a group of folks in our community who like the idea of having visitors pay their fair share. But I also think that there's potential secondary effects of paid parking that could impact our own residents that maybe they and we and everybody haven't all thought through. And unless it's gonna bring in so much money that it's just an absolute automatic win that solves real problems, you know, it could end up becoming a distraction as certain other topics in the past became distractions. So that would be my only caution. And you know, I think that we will very likely, I suspect we will very likely get to a point in the future where this and other new revenue streams become important and likely are adopted in some form or another. But I also think that we need to sort of work through some of the startup phases that we're still in with the relatively new city manager, relatively new city clerk, you know, needing a finance director and cleaning up all that function. There's a lot of work for us to do over the next 6 months. And anything that invites controversy, I think could be counterproductive. So that's just my thought. You know, to say that we could do a study on it, I mean, that's not necessarily the controversy, but it could kick things off. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to weigh in on this? All right, let's bring it back to council for discussion.
Yes, I feel like, Julie mentioned a couple times of the solution, but I guess in my mind, a solution means you have to define your problem, and I don't know that we have. Because I think we started out, the problem was a revenue problem, and what I'm hearing is don't go into this if you think you're solving a revenue problem. And as I mentioned before, just picking these two random spots, to me, those are two totally different, probably different problems to be solved, right? I mean, parking congestion in Malaga Cove Plaza versus trying to get visitors to pay their own way in the Rat Beach parking lot. I mean, that's two totally different problems with differences. So yeah, I don't know that the problem, I don't know what problem we are solving for.
Well, I think Rat Beach also has a traffic, at least during certain months, a traffic or parking congestion problem where it's hard to find parking down there.
I have not experienced that, but I don't, I might not be the right person maybe, but I've never gone down there and not been able to find a parking spot.
I've had challenges.
Okay, so maybe you've gone down there more.
So I belong to the beach club.
Probably, yeah, right.
How, maybe this is for Carrie, have you talked about how much staff time this would require?
I haven't really talked about it. Julie and I had a great conversation. You heard about her magic wand exercises.
Love it.
Right.
And all
Those are good.
all the people that have been touched. I mean, this goes back to sort of a policy call, right? So if this is something that the council would like staff to identify and work on, I don't know whose desk this would land on. Probably my desk right now. This is not, something that I have somebody I can give this to right now. But if it's something that the council wants, I think Julie and her group will probably be very comprehensive and provide a pretty good work product. I don't know if we can keep up with them. I don't know.
Can I chime in? I have a couple, three concerns here. Number one, the difference of doing paid parking in Malaga Cove versus the coastal areas. And understanding that the coastal commission would have to weigh in on anything along the coast, which would include Bluff Cove and Lanada Bay. I assume that wasn't mentioned, but could be added to the equation. What this would do to the businesses in Malaga Cove, I would hesitate to predict right now. I think there would be a lot of negativity because there's a lot of in and out, short-term activities and how you would monitor. But the bottom line to me is what's the ROI on this thing? We need revenue in our city, and if you're going to do a parking program, you're going to have enforcement, and that's going to cost money. And when we look at the cost of whether the consultants' reports, going to implement a program, if you have to go to coastal commission and that's going to take a year or more, and you have to hire more parking enforcement, and we're talking about nickels and dimes, I'm not sure that's worth the time of our staff right now. We've got major, huge financial issues, and I would not be in favor of expending dollars at this stage for this type of project, let alone staff resources. I think it's a commendable thing that we need to look at in the future, but I think we ought to go after the major revenue sources, such as a tax measure that we have to deal with. And whether we do a parking study isn't going to move that needle, in my opinion. So I can't support this right now.
I struggle with this because we've had a number of residents ask us. This is a topic that has come up in our city probably, I don't know, Julie, you said that you've gotten requests for a proposal. This is like the third or fourth time that the city, so it seems to be something the city keeps bringing up, residents keep bringing up. And, this is an opportunity to finally answer that question. And the point of bringing in a consultant is the consultant does the majority of the work. Yes, they'll have some time with staff, just like LSL did, but at the end of the day, LSL is the one out there doing the work. The consultant's the one out there doing the work. And so, this is one of those things that just keeps rearing its head. And it would be nice to finally do the study and put those questions to bed.
I just drawing the comparison to the finance department versus the parking. I don't think it's a fair comparison. I mean, one's huge.
Well, no, mine was about the amount of staff time required to.
Understand. I understand that there's some questions by residents of why we don't charge for parking, but I think there's some good reasons. And I think the reasons really go along with the fact that if we're going to do it along the coast, we're going to have to go through a significant investment. And whether we do it in Malaga Cove and Lanada Bay, somebody's got to get out there and enforce it. And so does that mean hiring another part-time or a full-time parking patrol officer at X dollars, and is that going to provide a return to the community, or are we better off focusing our energy somewhere else?
Right, well, that's part of what the model is not, right? That's all, it's total cost that's included. I mean, we always talk about, well, let's find out from the experts, and now we've got an expert who can tell us, and now we're saying, well, we already know the answer.
So Carrie and Chief maybe as well, what's our call and email, whatever, any form of communication that we receive, that's parking complaints? Looking to
I'm
dispatch.
looking at Luke, he's shaking his head. Are you shaking my head, don't answer the question, or are you shaking your head? I don't think I've received a parking complaint. Yeah.
So into dispatch?
I mean, we receive calls about vehicles parked illegally, which we respond to, but in regards to calls complaining that there wasn't enough parking at Rat Beach or not.
Or in Malaga Cove or rough, yeah, it's just saying, oh, I can't get it, move those people, how come you don't make those people move along and blah, 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 whatever.
I would say it's extremely minimal, and it does not reach my desk at all. So I never hear from residents complaining about it directly.
And Carrie, how, I guess those calls would come into reception, I assume.
Yeah, I've not been made aware of. I'm trying to think, I don't think I've been made aware of any concerns.
Any other councilman, I mean, it sounds like you maybe do, but I mean, more during COVID, for sure.
Oh, we got a lot.
We got a lot during COVID, of course, right after, but I mean, in the last couple of years, I mean, general, complaint here. I mean, if I have, it can't possibly be 5 in a year. It's probably the same person 5 times, actually, now that I think about it.
Oh, really? No, I'm kidding.
I'm not naming it.
I think we have 2 issues here. One is parking practice, potentially charging for it. Is that a revenue source? How small is it? Is it worth the squeeze? That's one piece. The other is, are there areas of congestion where we can better manage parking? I'll tell you, this is, it's because I live down the street. Maybe I'm the only one that experiences it. I make the conscious decision to skip going to lunch at Malaga Cove Plaza.
Yeah, it's a pain in the neck at lunch.
Because it is so bad at lunch. And I don't know if that's parking configuration. I don't know if that's timing, if there are people, nothing against realtors, I'm gonna pick on that. Somebody comes in, parks in a space, overstays a space,
Oh, it's probably employees parking down there and not
not
moving
picking
their
on the
car.
police department either. Sometimes we enforce it, sometimes we don't.
Exactly.
Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. And yes, of course, be careful what you do, because you gotta enforce it. The demand, the demand there is, also goes up and down, of course, by hours, right? Because by 4 in the afternoon, it's ghost town, 5 o'clock, right? But in that noon time period, it's a huge problem. So I don't know whether we increase.
Probably same in Lenata Bay too, actually. It's hard to
Right,
park in
that's
Lenata
true.
Bay at noon,
And
yeah.
then, and also right after school is bad. I don't know if that's increased enforcement. I don't know if that's, geez, ask the traffic safety committee to help us out and evaluate the parking with Public Works. So we have 2 issues and they could combine, they could not. But we definitely have 2 issues. The Coastal Commission challenge, I'm not sure that juice is worth the squeeze.
Such a phrase for the day.
Somebody learned a new phrase.
I use that phrase all the time.
Phrase for the day.
I use it all the time.
I feel like, I
Sorry, I use it more in my business than I do here, but.
feel like, I feel like Dixon is, definitely the right partner.
Yeah.
For sure. I don't think this is the right time. And I just would like to probably take this proposal and obviously if we ever came back, you have reserve the right to update your proposal, of course. But, I don't think this is the right time. I think that our focus, in the coming year really it has to be a revenue, it has to be a staffing and funding the city. Staffing the city, funding the city, and I think we have to stay focused and
So what is
And
our,
I don't think this checks either of those boxes today.
what is our, I was gonna say, but no, what is our answer and our new council members potentially answer to residents when we start working on priority number one, which is revenue? But what is our answer to them when they say, well, we've spoken in surveys before, and we've told council members directly, we want options for non-tax revenue. What have you done about it?
We solicited proposals from very qualified consultants who, in no uncertain terms, said the driving force of doing this work is not revenue generation.
I would concur.
Can I mark, what time is it?
Yeah, mark that down, would you?
What time is it?
He's giving us a hard time, Victoria.
Well, if you ignore them, then it doesn't matter.
Just wait. Just wait.
That's twice
Um,
this fiscal year.
So,
All right,
yeah,
so
I don't know, so that's, yeah, I mean, I struggle too, because I do, you know, and actually you laid it out, I wasn't really ignoring you. You did lay out, well, there's a series of issues here. I just don't think now is the time to tackle them. They're not burying the city, they're not, you know, the world, it's not all coming to an end.
No, it's not number one.
It's an improvement, not it's not an essential service that we need to deal with, it's an improvement. And for right now, we're gonna have to put improvements over here and deal with the core.
Derek was trying to be cautious in his comments, but I'll say what he was thinking. Guys, this one could end up in another roundabout situation. Careful what you're trying to say.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Julie, I'm not hearing a consensus
right
here
now.
to move forward at this point in time. Thank you for coming. Thank you for
Absolutely.
engaging.
Yeah,
Yet
we know where to
another
find
time.
you.
Yet another time.
Yeah, no, thank you.
All right. Meeting's lasting longer than I predicted. All right, let's move on to item number 8, the Malaga Cove water intrusion update.
Mayor, members of the council, just a few items to update in our bi-monthly report to you. On November 19th, staff did meet with our owner group, our working group, ostensibly to hear their plans for solving the problem, how they were going to individually look at that. It turned into more concepts of solutions to which we tried to drive them to more concrete plans. We've offered to run interference with other agencies, to lend our engineering support on comments, hey, what do you think of this type of thing? And really encouraging them to get down to a solution that's drawn on a piece of paper. Their first step that they want to take is to run a camera. They've hired, retained somebody, a professional, want to run a camera into the existing facility to really understand currently the damage on the existing facilities. We've done that before. We ran into about 26 feet in, we ran into what looks like asphalt, but that can't be. So they're going to do that. We'll assist them on that. And then, as I say, we'll continue to help get them to a solution. Through a conversation with the water board, and actually was something that was referred to us, we think that will be able to utilize a hose instead of our infamous sandbag alley, but use a hose to more clean and better contain water and get it into the storm drain without using the sandbags. Now, the key to this is it's got to be free flowing. You can't have any pumped water. So we think that there's a few applications where it might work, and then we can kind of clean up Malaga Lane where we currently have the sandbags. They're deteriorating. So
Is there enough pressure to put it through?
it's just flowing water. So we'll put it to the drain, we'll connect it to the drain.
Gravity.
So a year and a half later, we're back at the same.
We can do what we
same
wanted to do
recommended
to begin with.
solution. Which was a hose, at least in the short term.
Sounds familiar.
Wow.
Just
I'm- I'm
just to
a month in.
clarify.
That was appropriately timed, that was very good.
You set me up.
Yeah.
We've also published our first article, that was a suggestion that came from the council, in our November 14th newsletter, talking about the status, where we're going with it, but more importantly, to use that as a vehicle to inform the community. We've also asked them, we do this every 2 weeks, so listen in the council meetings. That concludes my report.
Thank you. So back to the hose, is there a timeline for doing this is my first question. Now that we think we can do it, do we have a plan moving forward with that?
Go ahead.
I think we got confirmation last week.
Yeah.
That we could do it, so we put it on Anthony's to-do list.
Okay,
Anthony's on vacation this week, so, but sooner than later.
okay, and then, you talked about cleaning up the alley. Has there been any discussion about having Malaga Manor contribute towards this street cleanup, since it's their water that has created the sludge and the slime and the algae?
No, not related to cleanup. Our conversations have centered around, what we believe is their problem they need to solve. And Phil was a little bit more indirect, but I'll be more direct. We're done talking about what we're gonna pay for and more about how are you guys gonna get this done? And how we're going to help you. Help you in terms of.
yourself.
Yeah, not by writing a check. That's not what we're doing. You know, but it's, they need to bring us an engineered plan to deal with that water. We're talking about multiple locations. To clean up on the camera, we're not, they're asking the city to run another camera. We showed them our video, they said. And I think the way we left it is, well, I didn't make a decision to do that, because I think we're gonna see anything differently. So, we've not talked to them about them participating in cleanup.
Okay, so my concern about cleaning, I support the hose to keep the street safe and all that. What I'm worried about is, once we put in the hose, they're like, look, there's no pressure on them now because the street's okay and they're just gonna keep running it. So how do we keep the pressure on them? Because we've been talking about the Malaga Manor solution for 6, 8, 9 months.
They recognize it's their responsibility. We're taking the tack of trying to keep the street safe. The hose is not gonna, look, the sandbags made a big difference and they lasted a lot longer than we thought. The reality is, and boy, do I sound like a broken record, we have a lot of turnover here, so you can't keep things going and get momentum. Now the hose, you're right, could this turn into the same old thing? I hope not, but we're onboarding a new city engineer next week. So I think the weekly meetings, the bi-weekly, every other week, not every other week, but the fact that you've asked us to talk to you about this every 2 weeks, the fact that we probably meet with this group every 3 weeks is the best chance we have to keep the pressure on them, is to keep the conversation going. Because the last thing we want to do is go into our corners and start fighting.
Let me
And
ask a
that'll
question.
extend it forever.
Let me ask it a different way. Does putting the hose in reduce pressure out of the water and allow sort of a, more focus on the long term rather than focusing on actually solving the short term problem?
Well, yes, but I think when you say long-term and I say long-term, we're talking about different things. Long-term for
I
me,
think we're talking about the same thing.
well, long-term for me is the big.
Multi-billion-dollar project.
Yes.
Yeah.
Midterm for me is, they still should, we can't have a hose out there forever. Right, but it takes the pressure off in terms of, we're not worrying about safety of the streets, we're not worrying about deteriorating sandbags.
That is just a liability reduction. We're gonna do.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right, but back to the mayor's question, I think the best tact we have is meeting with them regularly, is taking contact, because, look, we'll sit down and say, hey, and we've been doing this, by the way, since July, bring us a plan for infrastructure improvements. I'm not thinking about it every single day. So if I know that in 3 weeks they're coming back, at least I'm asking the same question again. If I know that in 2 weeks you're gonna ask me that question, at least it's giving me and Phil and I think his name's Mike, something to stay on top, or on target with.
Let me ask you a question about, Phil, you mentioned that they want to still run a camera in there. Is there any risk or liability of any damage that doing that? Because at one point in time, there was discussion about if we were to try to run some kind of a camera down that pipe, that it would potentially cause more damage. And I don't want to see us liable for anything like that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think they're gonna find anything different than what we've already found, and we showed them. We put a camera in there and, it's not usable. If it collapses anymore, perhaps damage to the roadway, but I don't think putting a camera in will cause a collapse.
I think maybe we're mixing issues. I think the issue was that
The rotor was gonna cause
it was
damage.
pressure to put pressure, right? In other
Yeah,
words,
there was at one time,
they wanted to blow water through there to clean that puppy out, and
But
there
this-
was no other end.
but
That
this,
didn't involve, that
This
didn't
is
involve
just
the camera.
coming in to look around. Okay, that's a big difference.
Now, they keep saying, well, that there's roots in there, maybe that's it. No, it's collapsed. So they'll go see that again.
So Malaga Manor, it's about putting a hose and continuing to talk with them to try and get them to put in their solution. So for the other side of the street, have they, you talked about concepts, coming up with actual plans?
Not for the other side of the
Not-
street.
There's like,
No, the problem on the other side of the street is it's gonna be so costly to dig down 16 feet to fix this drain, this pipe, this French drain.
but you're assuming that that's the only solution.
Well, right, so now we're looking for other solutions. As we've talked about lowering the water table. We're gonna get a permit, so we're in the process of getting that permit. Once we get the permit, then we'll cost that out and bring it to you. A new solution has been brought to us as a concept, and so we're looking into that. So.
But that's what I wanted to know. kind of.
Yeah, we're not just stuck on the
Yeah,
thing,
no, I
but
think
there's
you were.
multiple items going around, and then like maybe it's just human nature, we're like, oh, well, we can do the hose, at least we get some success, and I think that's kind of what we're doing, that maybe back to Councilman Kemp's point, take some pressure off, it's like we're not so much worried about the slime and the liability, now we can kind of take a breath and focus on other things, what's going to be incumbent upon us is to stay on top of that.
Did the city participate in I'd seen on Nextdoor that the steering group had pulled together a Zoom meeting that was open to everyone. We have no idea what
No.
came out of that. Okay.
Wasn't invited.
Any other
I'm
questions?
sorry, did he say next door? What's that?
Yeah.
Any other questions from council? Any questions from the public? Yes, please come up and introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Hello, Robert Amos, Mayor Murdoch, and honorable council members. Thank you for finally doing what Mayor Murdoch and I had a discussion about putting a pipe down there on Malaga Lane. It was probably been 6 months ago. Thank you, it was I actually brought that up and I said, put something, because I came out of the coin dealer and I skied down a ball of slime for about 10 feet. Fortunately, I know how to ski, so I didn't fall on my behind, but it's really beyond anything else, it's a liability. Because you cannot get into the coin dealer without, if you were in a wheelchair or in any way handicapped, you can't get there. And then the hair salon just up the street, I mean, that whole thing, it's a great solution. So I commend finally doing the right thing, getting the pipe down the gutter. and clean the slime off of that street.
Thank you. Now we know where you're hanging out.
14.
It's a great place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just add in here?
Yeah.
No, but you can hear, I appreciate the comment.
Sit down, Bob.
I just want to go on record. Up until a week ago, we were told we couldn't put up.
No, I understand that. That was the conversation I had with you.
Yeah, okay. I just,
We were told we're not.
we asked and asked and asked, and all of a sudden we asked somebody else, and they said you couldn't, and we said, okay, write it down.
We're taking
Yeah,
that
well,
answer.
we'll
Write it down
Yeah.
quick.
Fast. Okay.
I remember when I got a lot of credit for the sandbags, that was a big win for me back in the day.
Well, now you can have.
It was like 4 years ago.
All right, so that ends that. Moving on to council member reports and tentative agenda items. Anyone got anything?
2 report items.
Okay.
On Thursday evening with Chief Belenga, we attended the Palos Verdes Peninsula Chamber of Commerce 2024 Salute to Business and Citizen of the Year. We were honored to represent the city in appreciation of all honorees, and particularly the Citizen of the Year that was selected and chosen is our own Robert Medawar, who has been a reserve police officer for Palos Verdes Estates for nearing 40 years. It was an absolutely wonderful dinner. It was great to see everyone. Very, very proud to represent the city, and somebody that wasn't thinking straight sat us next to Chief Belenga. So, my second one is just to note that on December 10th, the City Council will commence its transition in bringing in the 2 new elected council members. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend that meeting, and our treasurer is with us tonight, sitting in the audience. So we will commit to being more inclusive. I'm sorry for that. Anyway, unfortunately, I can't be at that meeting. I wanted to take a minute because it is a tradition at that meeting to recognize the outgoing mayor, and in particular, in this case, sadly, she's no longer going to be on the council with us, but she will be our friend and resident. Don, I very much want to thank you and tell you how much I appreciate your one-on-one collaboration, your being my ear and vice versa, me being your ear. Maybe more that way, okay? And your support and really your willingness to fully invest and for all that you've done in support of our residents. I think that the promises that you made and the commitments that you made to residents during your campaign, you absolutely, whether those things were seen through and successful or not as a result with the entire council, I think you absolutely busted it, and we're grateful for your time, man.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So,
Who's gonna follow that up?
Oh, mine's really boring. Well, while you were at the fancy event on Thursday, I was.
You got to go to the COG meeting.
COG meeting. Just to call, actually, I see our incoming councilman left, but so interestingly, in the cities that make up the South Bay COG, there's 10 or 12 incoming new council members.
Wow.
And so the COG is actually holding a new city council member training on December 12th. I think our 2 are both attending. And then, of course, she'll go back and meet with people individually, anyone who couldn't make the group. But I thought that was interesting that they're, kind of doing an overall training. I don't know if it's very hazing, hopefully not. And then the other thing that was sort of interesting about that meeting, and I kind of put this on the city manager's radar, but I thought you in particular probably be interested, that, we have the fiber optic network that is kind of that ring around the hill that provides, fiber optic to City Hall, the city halls, call it government buildings. But there is actually now a initiative, plans, I suppose, or they call it plans for the future, but to have what they call an open access converged network that should expand that. It's still a little unclear what that really means and if there's a benefit to us for that, but I mean, there could be, should
sounds
be.
like we're about to be in the utility bill business.
And, well, I think that maybe that is where that heads. is. And where basically the cities become a utility provider, which I think would be about the last thing you would want to do here. But anyway, interesting, and it's, made sure it was on the city manager's radar just because, the COG leadership team said, oh yeah, we've talked to all the IT people at all the cities. I thought, uh-oh. And so I just kind of went to the city manager, and he had been included in this, there was a city manager's update. So anyway, on the radar, but that was interesting. That's it for me.
Was there did I hear there was it's American Dark Fiber that provided that, there's a change in ownership or something, I heard,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I attended the sanitation district.
Wow, this is really
board
going
meeting.
downhill from there to here.
Yes.
We're in the trash now.
I actually
We're in the trash meeting.
I got to tour the Warren facility over there on Figueroa. I think it's in Carson. It was a great tour. Everything's enclosed, so you don't see anything. So they give you a presentation in advance. But we also got to visit the Pure Water Demonstration Lab, where the goal, it's, 10 to 15 years out. So what happened, sewage comes in, they separate the solids, and then the liquid, they treat. And then they pull out all the things, they do reverse osmosis and all this other stuff, and then the clean water goes to the ocean, right? And you can take their boat tour, and that shows kind of where that happens. But what they want to do now, because we live in a drought environment, is they want to take that effluent that's going to the ocean, which is basically clean water, and they're cleaning it even more. And in fact, it gets so clean that there's 0 minerals in it. So you can't drink it because it would literally take out the calcium and everything from your bones. So they have to reintroduce minerals. But the plan is down the road to create this pure water, which then they can work with Metropolitan Water District and blend it and try and help de-drought sensitize this area, the area that they cover. So that was really interesting to go view and see all of that.
Did they give you a sample?
No,
With or without the minerals?
Oh,
No, I know why he said that, because the Las Virgenes Municipal Water District has a functioning, albeit small, version of this, and they have, anytime they do those, you get samples.
they gave you a
They've done collaborations with coffee houses, they've done they stopped calling it toilet to tap, they used to call it that.
No.
Can you see it now?
Remember, did they used to call it?
Can you see it?
What is wrong with you?
Coffee with a cough.
Obviously, yeah.
No, in fact, and I think I ran into Trevor at this one, they did a collaboration with the local brewery. So this is coming, this is for real.
Well, they've got this demonstration lab, and they've got this entire lot at the back there, where they are going, it's like mega money, but they are going to be building that out in collaboration with MWD. The other thing I just wanted to say is on Monday, I will be burying the PVE flag.
Apparently we have one.
Apparently they have. At the Janice Hahn oath-taking ceremony downtown. So I will take a picture of our flag, and I didn't know we had it.
They're providing the flag, and
I know.
my charge to you is walk away with the flag.
I think I can do that if they created it.
Oh, is that online?
He said that, I'm kidding.
Okay, David, anything to report out on?
Well, yeah, we started off talking about celebratory events. I had the pleasure of attending the 100th anniversary celebration of the golf club a week and a half ago. And they had over 300 people at the celebration. It was a phenomenal event for the golf club. They're extremely proud, happy of all the progress that they've been able to make. And everybody had a very positive, good time. I think
You survived the entertainment?
Did you
You know, the fact, I was sitting in the cold and I missed most of the entertainment.
Oh, that's too bad.
But I could hear what was being said in the cold where I couldn't have in the ballroom. But the only other thing I wanted to make sure, I know in the future agenda, I think we just added the county and the LSL proposal, that's not reflected in the agenda, that it was to be.
We need to put the quarterly investment and monthly investment reports. I'll send you a note.
Okay.
And thank you for putting the new IPAC meeting calendar. That's been languishing since January 2023. So thank you, Tanika.
All right, with that, I adjourn the meeting here at 9:23 PM. See you December 10th.
I predicted 9:30, that was pretty close.
I thought
You did it. I thought it was short.
Did you? Well, actually, when I left that house, I told Nick, okay, 3 agenda items, 3 hours. 3 hours?
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Direction on this.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'm out.
Carrie?
Are you cooking? Is it just the 4 of you? Are you cooking? You guys going out Nice. How about you?
Yeah, it's just 6 of us this year, no kids.
I already sent it.
No, kids are all the one kid who lives locally. Yeah, my aunt, my mom and dad, my aunt and uncle. Yeah, the son who's local is from Florida and meets girlfriend's family. So they go, oh, okay. So we'll have everybody at Christmas. So we have no, it's very unusual for us.